Okay, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the regular council meeting scheduled for Tuesday, April the 7th. It's currently 7 p.m. Before we get started, the Village of Anmore would like to open our meeting by recognizing the many Indigenous peoples of our area, including the following First Nations with communities that are located in the region that we now know as Metro Vancouver. That'd be the Musqueam, Squamish, Tsleil-Waututh, and Coquitlam. Further, we'd like to honor the important place in history occupied by the many territorial keepers of these lands and waters around us since time immemorial. I'll call the meeting to order. Approval of the agenda. Could I get someone to move the recommendation that the agenda be approved as circulated? Seconded. Any discussion? See none. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. Public input. Please make sure that when you're coming up to the microphone, you recognize your name and your address as well. If we could please make sure to keep it to 2 minutes. At the end of 2 minutes, there is a timer here. I will ask you if you can wrap up your comments, and then we'll move on to the next person. Please make sure they are directed towards those items that are on the agenda.
Border here? Can you ask them if they can hear? Because I hear some weird echo.
Could somebody, is the sound all right at the back there? Is it better now? Sorry, there's no more. Is the echo gone? Hold on just a sec. Lena, they're going to need a microphone for the public input. Okay. So remember, public input, please, when you come to the microphone, name and address. Make your, if you could make your comments limited to 2 minutes. The timer is just on the left there, and I will remind you at the end of 2 minutes if you are going a little bit over, just to wrap it up. That would be great, thanks. So I'll now open up to public input for items on the agenda, on tonight's agenda. Anybody want to?
Testing. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Good. Okay. Neil Lyons, 1024 Ravenswood Drive. Good evening, Council. I am here tonight speaking to you on behalf of the Anmore Residents Association. Recently, we sent a list of questions to village staff compiled by our members regarding the Pinnacle Ridge zoning proposal, which is on tonight's agenda. I want to focus on the one question and answer which really stood out. That being question number 6, which read, can you provide us with an example of a similarly sized subdivision with a similar housing mix on a similar size footprint that exists in the Lower Mainland that is entirely on septic? The answer we received was no. It therefore is evident that this proposal, if passed, would represent an experiment in something that has never been done before, not only in the Lower Mainland, but probably in all of BC and perhaps beyond. The associated risks are indeterminable, which means we must assume they are moderate to high. And I quote, new experiments inherently come with an associated risk of high failure, as they involve exploring the unknown, untested, or technically challenged territory. While failure is sometimes a result of flaws like design, it is more commonly expected at the expected outcome due to pushing the boundaries. The proposed Pinnacle Ridge indeed pushes septic boundaries and represents an urban-style development which would be better suited within the Metro Vancouver urban containment on a proper sanitary sewer system and not in rural Anmore. Therefore, for the Council to proceed with third reading at this time without independent assessments would be, in our view, beyond irresponsible. Our organization believes that the residents of Anmore do not want to see our village participate in a housing development experiment that is potentially fraught with unknown consequences. So thank you, Mayor and Council, and thank you to our members for their continued support.
Thank you. Next speakers.
I can be heard? Okay.
Yeah. I just want to, can everybody hear everybody, the speakers in the back of the room as well? Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Good evening. Ramey Coppell, 1017 Ravenswood. speaking on behalf of the Anmore Residents Association. I recognize that Council has spent significant time reviewing this application and balancing the many considerations involved in a project of this scale. Across Metro Vancouver, when developments are proposed on steep slopes, councils often take an additional step before third reading to ensure that key risks, such as slope stability, groundwater movement, and environmental impacts, have been independently verified. This has occurred in places like the British Properties, Burke Mountain, and the District of North Vancouver. That practice helps ensure decisions are based on the most complete technical information available and that both the community and council can have confidence in the outcome. Independent review before third reading helps protect downstream properties, sensitive creeks like Mossam Creek, and ensures council's decision is supported by a complete and defensible evidentiary record. Dr. John Clagg, a leading Canadian geologist, wrote to me stating, "Independent stormwater management and geotechnical assessments are essential before council approves development of such a slope." Taking the step of requiring independent review before third reading would simply ensure the decision you make is strong and well supported as possible. And as a side note, in reviewing the financial advantages to the village to have this high density proposal, the comparison was made based on a 1 acre lot as opposed to the high density. I have seen nothing there that compares with half acre
If you could just
or
wrap it up.
lots of something similar as far as the financial report.
Thank you. Thank you. Any more speakers? Oh.
Okay, Ken Uvik, 120 Lanson Crescent. I'm also one of the Anmore Residents Association directors. I'm strongly opposed to council granting third reading to the Pinnacle Ridge high-density development proposal on Anmore steep slopes. There are serious unresolved risks that have not been adequately addressed. This proposal includes over 100 communal septic systems on steep slopes, conditions known to raise concerns about system failure, environmental damage, and long-term maintenance. Additionally, storm runoff-related landslides and sedimentation into the fish-sensitive Mossam Creek have already been documented with Pinnacle Ridge construction in the past. These are not hypothetical risks. They have already occurred in our community. 1175 East Road, septic failure required a switch to a sewer connection. At Countryside Village on Sunnyside Road, the system has faced compliance issues, contributing to pollution entering steam streams feeding Bunsen Lake. Crystal Creek Estates has also faced challenges for exceeding effluent limits. Yet fundamental questions remain. Who is responsible for these septic system failures? Who assumes liability in the event of landslides or slope instability? How will the village ensure taxpayers aren't left with a financial burden? Equally concerning is the process that has led us here. Many residents find the OCP amendment process and this proposal side by side confusing, lacking transparency, and undermining public trust. For a project of this scale, the public deserves clarity and openness. There's also a widely discussed concern in the community today. Should any member of council have a personal relationship with the developer, it is with the utmost importance they recuse themselves from deliberations. Even the appearance of a conflict of interest undermines public confidence. A voluntary recusal would help protect the integrity of the application process. Granting third reading today carries serious negative and long-term consequences for public safety, environmental protection, financial security, and the credibility of our local governance. Anmore residents deserve critical independent reports and analysis prior to council granting third reading.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Jody Summers Cook, 1660 East Road. We are considered one of the hillside properties. I'll make it quick. I've sent council, mayor, my objections. I've been up to our neighbor's property, which is up behind me. Our property will back, Pinnacle Ridge will back right onto the top of our property. And I've been up top, not just when it's raining, and I've seen the runoff already coming down the hillside. So because of the steepness of the property, I'm quite concerned for all the neighboring properties and just what this will do to Anmore. So I am also asking that we don't go to approve a third reading tonight, and maybe just do a little bit more research into this. Thank you.
Thank you.
You just reset that time, thanks. Do you mind resetting that to 2 minutes there? Okay, thanks.
We'll give you a couple seconds. Go ahead.
Sure, okay. Ben Lowen, 1722 East Road. Again, much like my colleague Jody, we are directly downstream of this Pinnacle proposed development and have some serious concerns and would request respectfully but clearly that council not proceed with the third reading tonight. Few points. First, process and timing. Obviously, this was, as noted in this agenda, report was submitted on April 2nd, right before Easter long weekend. Obviously, you guys have just gotten back to work today, likely over a 4-day weekend. So timing-wise, likely insufficient to provide a review of a document so thick and long. Second, bylaw itself is being amended tonight, redoing a second reading, and then into a third reading. We request you reconsider that, stick with the second, do not approve a third reading at this time. Third, there's some unresolved concerns from Port Moody, Sasamat Fire Department, and the Mawson Creek that have not been directly addressed by council, by the village. No clear documentation. A lot of these things have been, as it talks about in your report, deferred to this future master development agreement, which again is how things are done, but usually there's a little more clear implementation tools, which is not the case in this one. Not clear where you're going with this. Technical inconsistencies about the revisions to some densities and land use or unit counts. There's potentially some issues or typos in your report. Open space, again, a lot of steep slopes, has already been mentioned, may not be as beneficial as you've maybe noted. Lastly, again, concerns about all of this. My family, my kids, we live right below this. There is significant runoff. I request you look at this again.
Thank you.
Ready?
Yep.
Nancy Maloney, 1724 East Road, also very, very close to the hillside development and part of the hillside cohort. And given this is such a dramatic, an incredibly dramatic change in the nature of Anmore, that I would like to request that, and it could be done during the October 17th municipal election, that a referendum be completed in terms of getting an actual genuine review of, do residents want this type of development coming to Anmore? So I think in terms of democracy, this is not something that certainly a lame duck council should be considering. The furthest thing should be happening by a lame duck council. And furthermore, I think there should be a referendum which could happen at no cost, absolutely no cost, during the October 17th election to see if this sort of dramatic change is something that the residents of Anmore actually do support.
Thank you. Sorry, please. Nick, sorry. Nick.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Ruth Foster. I'm from Belcarra. I'm a long-time volunteer at the Mawson Creek Hatchery. There is much for Council to consider as you choose the direction the Village of Anmore will take as it grows. I appreciate your hard work, especially as it relates to the proposal this evening, Pinnacle Hillside. During site preparation for Pinnacle Ridge 1, I fought a losing 2-year battle for regulatory oversight, and I will never forget the traumatic effects that the multiple failures had on Mossam Creek. It wasn't just the mudslide across East Road. There were many incidents of illegally high turbidity that went unaddressed. This occurred well beyond our region, well before our region had atmospheric river events. We believe the village cares about the environment and therefore should act proactively to protect it. We hope you'll decide to proceed only when the way forward is devoid of foreseeable risk. As watershed stewards, the concerns we consider are turbidity, flow regime changes, and contamination both overland and through the soil. I've not seen another example of a steep slope development of this density on communal septic systems. Perhaps such an example has been provided by the proponents. My understanding is that septic systems work for large rural lots, but are not recommended for dense developments. The preliminary studies state that this project is deemed, quote, feasible, on condition that the recommendations suggested are all incorporated into the designs and that they are strictly adhered to. Our question is, how can this be assured? If history repeats itself, there will not be adequate checks and balances. The village has lacked the capacity to effectively supervise land clearing, construction, and the ongoing issues for smaller developments. How will it handle this very large one? Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm sorry to interrupt. There's 58 seconds left of the 15 minutes, just to let you know.
There's only 15 minutes for the...
Yeah, for the first public input period, yes.
I'll ask council, can we extend that motion of council? Can somebody put forth a motion to extend the public input?
May you also clarify up to how many minutes we're going to extend?
Another 10 minutes?
Up to 10 minutes? Yeah, 1 minute left.
I will be very quick. I'm not going to take the 2 minutes.
I'm just asking.
But if there's a lineup behind me.
So I just wanted, before we start, so there is no motion to extend it at all, just to let everybody know?
Okay.
No?
I would make a motion to extend it 5 minutes to a maximum of 20 minutes.
Okay. Okay.
If we do that, I think we have a big agenda to get through, but if we do it, I think we need to make sure people speak for 2 minutes. Everyone's gone quite over.
I've been watching it very closely.
Everybody's gone over, so, yeah.
Holy cow. I've been watching it. Yeah, it's been 2 minutes. It's been bang on 2 minutes. Everybody's been very respectful. So do I have a motion to extend this for 5 minutes? Anybody second it? Okay, I'll second it. Any discussion? I'll call the question. All those in favor of extending public input for 5 minutes? Okay, so you have 6 minutes.
2 minutes.
Yeah, you have 2 minutes, but we have 3 more speakers after that.
I'll take 6 if you want. I don't have a problem with that. Lisa Johnston, 180 Hemlock. I know it's not question period, it's input, so I have to try to say this in a way that I am a concerned citizen like the rest of Anmore. I've spent 21 years in this community. I look forward to how we're going to grow the next 21 years, and I'm trusting all of you to do what you need to do. A question that I can't ask right now, but I'm going to maybe frame it to you, put it in your mind going forward. I have heard a lot of, I don't want this, I don't want that. I'm scared of this, I'm scared of that. If that is the only solution, can you please come up with what's the alternative? I hear a lot of, Mayor, you have said more than one time, this land is going to be developed. These people have been paying taxes, so if it's not what's presented now, what's the option? Do we go with RS1, 1 acre parcels, huge monster homes, which you've said are not financially feasible to the village? So I'm only going to take a few more seconds. Please provide us with an alternate, if you can. What's this or that? Thanks.
Thank you. So if we could, 3 more speakers.
Trudy Schneider, 2318 Sunnyside Road. Further to what Lisa was just saying, my point was going to be we need a steep slope development policy, and I think we need it to be ours because our situation is unique. I know there are others around that we could refer to, but ours will have septic and we have certain other conditions. And I also feel like local knowledge is extremely important in a case like this. We've heard all these people, they're not mean-spirited or naive. It's just that if you've lived here a while, you've seen things go wrong. We've had experts. They fly in, they do their thing, and they leave, and they do what they've learned to do, and they do it well, but you can't compensate for the local knowledge. So I really feel if we had our own people saying where the silt fences will go, and this is land that does not absorb, and this is land where there's immediate silt runoff in the rains. We've seen that. We can tell you stuff like that. And people are afraid because we know there's a place in Belcarra where people on top of them, above them, did some changes, and then they had to pay $150,000 plus just to fix the damage that was done. And these things do happen. It's not just our pinnacle. It happens everywhere, but we just want, yes, we trust you to do that. But I think if we had our own people doing it, our own people thinking it out and checking it, that would make us feel better. Thank you.
Thanks. 2 more speakers, if we could. Or 1 more, sorry. This will be our last speaker.
My name is Kevin Ryan, 12 Mawson Creek Drive. I'm a longtime volunteer and president of Mawson Creek Hatchery. I want to talk about the impact of the proposed urban density in the specific location. It's on a steep slope and above Mawson Creek. I have several concerns. My biggest is all the waste that will be managed by septic instead of connecting to Metrovan sewage system. I'd like to read a portion of the engineering report. Due to the complexity of the site, particularly with respect to steep slope grading, septic system performance, stormwater management, water servicing and integration will require detailed technical analysis and design at the subdivision stage. Final feasibility will depend on confirmation through detailed engineering, geotechnical investigation, hydraulic modeling, and regulatory approvals at the subdivision stage. Staff reports concern over cumulative impact of these septic systems. Quote, more in-depth analysis will be done at the subdivision stage. Another staff comment, the subsurface soils in this area consist of silty sand and gravel glacial till, which has limited ability to infiltrate septic flows. Again, staff recommends deferring critical, detailed geotechnical and hydrological studies to the subdivision stage. A critical admission embedded in the engineering report, slope stability, drainage, and environmental protection are all contingent on detailed design at the subdivision stage. I'm no expert, but should not Anmore staff and council deal with these major concerns before approval? This is just my opinion, but I am concerned that it's not responsible for council to proceed with approval at this time. These proposed designs have not been fully tested or proven on the works on the site. Please consider this when making your decision. If the project is approved, I ask council to make certain that a bond is placed on the developers during and after construction, especially after construction.
Okay.
In addition, perhaps a covenant should be placed.
Thank you, Mr. Ryan. Okay. Okay, we'll now move on. We have delegations from Torca, Juan Gaviria of Torco to present a proposal for a race event. Welcome.
Okay, there is a presentation coming. Perfect. So I'm here to present on behalf of Torca a proposal to the village. We want to create collaboration between Torca and some of the trails in Anmore. And I think what I want to propose today, it's a race. So for the ones that don't know, Torca, it's a volunteer-run Canadian charity. We operate in the Tri-Cities. We have agreements with the city of Coquitlam, Port Moody. We also have agreements with Rec Sites BC and Burke Mountain. We maintain the trails in Eagle Mountain. And we have around 600 active members. We've been working with local municipalities for over 10 years. We maintain around 60 kilometers of trails. The ones closer to here are Eagle Mountain and Berthlin Park. And we also do some big events per year. We do 4 races. So we do twice a year, we do an enduro race in Eagle Mountain. We start from Coquitlam, close to the baseball diamonds of the mountain. We also do 2 events in Berthlin Park. One is a cross-country race, and the other one it's a poker ride, more for like families. What I'm here to present today is a new race or a 3rd enduro race for the Torca, and it would be one that is hosted in Anmore. And we start and end here from the hub, and we go and we climb the Eagle Bluff trails to the lookout, and then we do Eagle Bluff South and the upper part of the Mac Trail. There is no cost to the village. Torca will take care of the insurance, the organization. We'll also do before and after trail inspection and maintenance and repairs as needed. This is some of the examples of the type of work that Torca does on some of the trails in Eagle Mountain. The ones in the center are the bridges on the Eagle Bluff trails that could use some maintenance, and we want to come and help and fix them. The race or the course would be living from here and climbing to Eagle Bluff on what it's per the Anmore bylaws on the P2 parkland. And it will also, it will be mostly be on Anmore P2 parkland. The goal of this is a test event, see how it works. I think everybody wins. The village, the residents benefit from free trail maintenance that it's planned to happen. We also are starting youth programming events here. Today we did the first after-school program with Torca at the Anmore Elementary. It was very successful. We are doing more events. We did the AGM here in Anmore. We are continually working with the village as advisors to the Spirit Park renovations. And our goal is to really get a good, strong partnership together. We have been doing some kids' social rides. We call the 6 to 12 age group the Little Shredders, and we go and we ride with them. Unfortunately, last year, Berthlin or Port Moody did not allow us to do paid clinics in Berthlin anymore. So we really can only do Riverside Forest, but we're looking potentially to have a home in Anmore in the future. So the proposal is to do a 3rd enduro race would be on Eagle Bluff. And so this is some stats about like how mountain bikers feel about the mental health, how they connect with the nature, how they like to disconnect and go to the trails. And they are very proud of the trails in the community. So the last slide, so what we're asking here is just the approval to allow us to host the event here. We'll take care of the insurance, the trail maintenance, the inspections, and I think it's a win-win for all the parties, not just Torca, but Anmore and the residents of Anmore.
Good. Thank you very much for your presentation. Thank you for all the volunteering you do in the community. And I know I've certainly been to quite a few events, and I think it's great for the kids getting out. I was born and raised in the North Shore, and that's where sort of the mountain biking in the Lower Mainland really took kind of got its wings underneath it. And I've always dreamed that we'd be able to bring some of this out here. And I know with your work, we are starting to really be a prominent area for mountain bike. I'll just open up for any questions from council. Councillor Weber.
Yeah, thanks again to all Torca does. I ride on those trails all the time. My question about the race, is there going to be an e-bike class for old guys like me?
I also ride an e-bike.
Okay, there you go. I'd appreciate it. Then
the way that the race works is it's a time segment. So really going downhill, it doesn't really matter if it's an e-bike or a non-e-bike. So it's open to everybody.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah. Any other? Councillor Richardson.
So is it a mass start or more of a time trial thing?
So everybody goes at their own pace. We start together, but the time segment, it's only from like the top of the trail.
Okay, so my only concern is if it's on a weekend and it's sunny and we have traffic on, because I think you're going down Sunnyside in order to get like Alpine or around there, based on the map.
Yeah.
And do you have all the required flaggers and everything? Because traffic here can be nuts on a sunny weekend.
We do it during a weekday. Typically, it's like on a Wednesday or Thursday.
Oh, that's better.
And we do have a lot of volunteers. We do course marking, and we have volunteers along the route.
Okay.
We do it already at Eagle Mountain, and we do it already at Bear Flynn, which I think it's more traffic.
And the only other suggestion I would have is like the park, if it's the same as all other years, they have gated times, you know, morning or afternoon. Try and do it away from when it switches, because that's when traffic's the worst.
Yeah, correct. The goal is to do it from here, so everybody would live here biking to do the event.
Good. Any other question? No? No? Okay, do we need a motion, Essen?
Yes.
You have something prepared?
Should council wish to support the event, I have drafted a motion for council's consideration that the village provide support to the Torca race event be conducted as requested by the delegation.
Someone to move that? Moved, seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor? Carried. Thank you again for coming, and thank you for the work that you do.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Okay, we have the minutes of the regular council meeting held on March 17th. Could I get someone to move the recommendation that those minutes be approved? Moved, second. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. Is there any business arising from those minutes? Councillor Richardson.
It's more of a clarification on policy and procedure. During the discussion on the OCP, it was objected that the wording was approved by council, even though somebody had not approved it. So for clarification, whether it's 5041 or 32, that's approval by council, is it not, Mrs. Executive Officer?
Through the chair, yes. If a motion carries, we record it as carried. If it carries anonymously, it is recorded as carried anonymously and becomes council's decision.
And there's no difference which way it's done? Like whether it's not unanimous or 4-1 or 3-1, it's still carried, it's done, it's approved by council?
No, actually, according to our procedure bylaw, we are, and let me find the, so if you give me a minute, I can find the pertaining section. I am required to record the, how the votes have occurred.
Yeah, okay, so that's a different thing. That's my next point. Like,
I thought you were asking
so
about that.
there's just generally approval, and then in the minutes it's recorded, and it's recorded who objected.
Yes.
And also, I believe the mayor has to verbally say who objected as part of the procedure bylaw.
Yes, in two different parts of the procedure bylaw,
so in
correct.
2 places it's stated, so there's no need to say, I want it recorded or anything, it's done.
As per the procedure bylaw, yes,
Okay,
that's the
thank you.
requirement.
Okay, we'll move on. We have a consent agenda. We have 2 items on the consent. Would anybody like to pull either one? Could I get someone to move the consent agenda? Moved, seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. Okay, we're now on to legislative reports. Bylaw number 731-2026, Anmore Local Government Elections Procedure Bylaw, and Bylaw 723-2026, Bylaw Notice Enforcement Bylaw. Ms. Essen.
Thank you, through the chair. Thank you so much for the opportunity tonight to present these 2 bylaws. As it's widely known, general local elections are scheduled for October 17th, 2026, with the required advanced voting opportunity scheduled for October 7, 2026. The Act also requires Council to adopt an election bylaw at least 56 days before, but that falls on July 6th, but we like to be more prepared than that. So staff carried out a systematic examination and review of best practices and regulations in the province and determined that a new local government election procedure bylaw, along with an amendment for the Anmore bylaw notice enforcement bylaw, sorry, it's a bit repetitive, would result in greater clarity and certainty with respect to the conduct of the upcoming elections. So what staff has done so far is we reviewed the existing bylaw, which is the number is 544-2015, and it's included as attachment 1 in this report. It was reviewed and updated in 2022 just to make necessary changes for the elections in that year. In preparation for the elections in October, we did a similar review and we identified a few sections sort of better aligned with the Local Government Act. And then we decided to introduce some amendments. However, while we're going through the amendments, we realized that it's so much clearer for both candidates, residents, and whomever want to be involved in elections in whatever capacity. We wanted to make the processes transparent, clear, and accessible. So I provided a list of changes we introduced in these bylaws. There's a list you can see on page 42, but I can provide a quick summary. We added a few definitions. We refined some processes. We made further clarifications to the mail ballot voting procedures, which is of course very important from an accessibility part of everything, and we find that very important, obviously. Also, we updated the sign locations to make it crystal clear for everyone where to put the signs and all those updates. We also, you can see the attachment 2 to this report is the new bylaw is in front of council for consideration and adoption, and attachment 3 is capturing what the local government election, the draft bylaw, is proposing. I didn't do. Okay. So my Chief Election Officer, Ms. Darkus, is also here with me tonight. Should you have any questions, we are more than happy to address. Thank you.
Okay. Open up for council. Any questions? Councillor Richardson.
Just the clarification that the table in there on all the fines for signs is only for elections.
That is correct. Only for elections.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Let's see. So could I get someone to, do you have a recommendation, Ms. Sesson?
Absolutely. That council give first, second, and third readings to Anmore Local Government Election Procedure Bylaw, No. 731-2026, and that council give first, second, and third readings to Anmore Bylaw Notice Enforcement Bylaw Amendment Bylaw No. 732-2026.
Someone to move that. Moved, seconded. Any further discussion? See none? I'll call the question. All those in favor? Motion's carried. Thank you. Okay, now we'll move on to 9B, Pinnacle Ridge rezoning application, bylaw number 669-2024, third reading. I thought the best way and most organized way is we'll go through, do you have a report to speak to it at first, or you do? Okay, perfect. And then I thought we'll do questions from, I'm sure, looking at people's notes, we'll do questions, and then let's do your report. We'll do the questions, and then we'll do comments after that. So we'll do a round of questions, because I'm sure that's going to take, I'm sure we'll have the same questions. So, good. Mr. Joseph, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you, Mayor and Council. Let's wait for these slides.
Yeah, you're going to have to bring that mic closer in.
How's this, guys? All good? All right. How's this? Hello, hello? Up. How's this? Perfect. Okay. So tonight I'll be presenting updates to the Pinnacle Ridge rezoning application and the zoning amendment bylaw number 699-2024.
Just wait. Can everybody hear all right out back? Okay.
I'll speak a little louder.
Yeah.
So I'll start with the purpose of the report, and then I'll go over some of the background, overview of the proposal updates, parks and open space trail updates, CD zone bylaw updates, committee feedback and responses, agency referral responses, the proposed master development agreement, some steep slope considerations, as well as technical study updates, and the proposed community amenity contribution. I'll finish off with some next steps and recommendations for council. So the purpose of this report is to present an updated summary of the Pinnacle Ridge rezoning application and provide council with a revised draft of the zoning amendment bylaw number 699-2024 for consideration of third reading. I'll be outlining updates to address committee and referral comments, outlining the proposed amenity contributions, and introduce the proposed master development agreement, which is attached as 5 to the report. And the report also outlines council options and next steps. So council first considered the Pinnacle Ridge proposal in June 2024 when the applicant brought forward a concept to develop approximately 75 acres of the hillside lands. At that time, council reviewed the proposal in the context of the official community plan and determined that the concept was consistent with the policies supporting residential comprehensive development and directed staff to bring forward a rezoning amendment bylaw for further consideration. Since that time, the application has progressed through several stages of review. Following council's direction at the second reading in July 2025, the application was also referred to several council advisory committees, as well as external agencies such as the City of Port Moody, Saskmat Volunteer Fire Department, and Wilson Creek Hatchery. Staff have worked with the applicant through this process to incorporate feedback and refine the proposed developments before council tonight. So in regards to update to development proposal, since the application was previously presented to council, several refinements have been made to the proposed land use plan. These refinements include minor changes to the housing mix as a result of the elimination of a proposed strata road on lot 24. Lot 24, just south of Charlotte Crescent there. This was to reduce disturbance to the hillside and increase areas dedicated to active parklands and trails on the site plan. Overall, the proposed development includes 269 principal units or 320 dwelling units, including secondary suites, with a mix of 51 single detached units and 51 permitted secondary suites, of which only 10% would be required by construction, as per the MDA, Master Development Agreement, and 32 semi-detached homes, as well as 186 townhouses. So through the proposed development agreement, additional provisions would also require that a proportion of the homes be constructed as barrier-free units in accordance with BC Building Code. The development would occur on clustered areas of the site where slopes are generally more moderate and allows large portions of the land to remain as open space or environmentally sensitive areas. Throughout the site, the proposal results in a gross density of approximately 3.6 units per acre, as well as 4.3 units per acre when you include potentially secondary suites being permitted. So approximately 24.3% acres of the site is proposed for open space, parkland, and trails. That is equal to about 32.5% of the site area, which would be dedicated upon subdivision. The trail network is over 2 kilometers in length with multiple benches and rest areas proposed throughout. The trails include half a kilometer of paved secondary trails that are around 6 meter wide that would also double as emergency access roads. And roughly 1.5 kilometers of unpaved trails that are half a meter wide, all in accordance with the specifications of the Parks Master Plan. The network provides connectivity within the site and surrounding areas were refined following public input and recommendations, or committee input and recommendations from the advisory committees. So the proposal also includes 1.2 acres of a neighborhood park, which has been increased in size from the earlier concept from 0.4 hectares to 0.5 hectares, which puts it in line with the Parks Master Plan. The park design concepts includes amenities such as accessible pathways, nature play features, and public washroom facilities as well. The provision of park enhancements will be governed under the Master Development Agreement, which I'll go over soon. So completion of these works would require a works and services agreement, complete with detailed parks plan and landscape plans, and would be required prior to subdivision approval, complete with bonds as well and security. So several revisions have been made to the proposed CD8 Comprehensive Development Zone following Advisory Planning Commission feedback and staff review. For one, floor area ratios for detached and semi-detached dwellings have been reduced from 0.6 to 0.35 and 0.45 respectively to ensure homes remain proportional to the parcel sizes as recommendation to the Advisory Planning Commission. Townhome FAR does remain at 0.6 to maintain the clustering of the units proposed on the site. It's noted that 0.6 FAR is typically considered a low density for townhome developments within the Lower Mainland. So site coverage limits have also been reduced for all housing types in order to increase the permeable surface of the area of the land and support improved stormwater management in line with committee recommendations as well. So that's 40% for 1 and 2 family dwellings and 50% for townhome dwellings. Rear yard and front yard setbacks for townhome developments have also been increased, including additional setback requirements for private amenity areas adjacent to interior side parcel lines. So this is evident there in one of the lots next to the townhome developments. The proposed setback increases do not fully meet the committee recommendations. However, combined with the required landscaping guidelines and plans, boulevard planting, and road right-of-way widths proposed for the development, the increased setback maintains similar spatial separation between the buildings and the roadways currently observed within the village. So in addition to that, provisions in the bylaw require that townhome units fronting onto roads be designed so that architectural elements are comparable to the primary front entrances of the units. So staff have also recommended that the bylaw be updated to exclude road right-of-ways within the zoning schedule. This would provide some flexibility during the detailed design phases during subdivision, as road alignments may need to shift slightly during subdivision and subject to engineering review. So including roads directly in the zoning plan would otherwise require additional zoning amendments if minor adjustments are needed. So instead of the roads, trails, and parklands will follow the comprehensive development plan as shown in Figure 1 to the report. These elements will also be secured through the Master Development Agreement, Attachment 5 to the report, which will guide the phase development of the sites and require general adherence to the comprehensive development plan. It is also important to note that the land use areas shown in the zoning plan do not include the road right-of-ways areas that will ultimately be required to access and service the development. So moving on to committee feedback and responses. The proposal was circulated to several advisory committees as part of the review process. So feedback from these groups have helped to inform revisions of the development concept and zoning provisions. So for example, committee feedback resulted in improvements to trail connectivity, enhancements to the park design, and accessible housing provisions on the site. Additionally, emergency access considerations were addressed and required in the Master Development Agreement, as well as wildfire mitigation requirements and upgrades to Windham Crescent walkways subject to secondary access through Windham Crescent. Staff also recommend that a septic maintenance bylaw be proposed to explore the regulation and routine inspections of septic systems on the hillside with some enforcement measures in place as well. So many of these recommendations will ultimately be secured through the Master Development Agreement proposed, and we'll go over that soon. Staff circulated the proposal to several external agencies to review environmental protection, emergency access, and servicing considerations. Staff have since worked with the applicant to address these comments through revisions to the development concept and conditions that would be secured through the proposed Master Development Agreement. Staff consulted with Mossam Creek Hatchery regarding watershed protection and potential downstream impacts. So in response, staff have included detailed geotechnical and hydrogeological studies to be included at subdivision stage in order to confirm slope stability and septic feasibility based on detailed design plans that would be submitted. The development is proposed to use type 3 on-site septic systems which treat and disperse wastewater gradually on the site. Construction and a construction environmental management plan would also be required prior to every phase of subdivision to protect the nearby water courses and ensure monitoring happens during construction. So detailed infiltration testing and a hydrogeological analysis as well as detailed septic design would be required at subdivision stage and is included in the Master Development Agreement. Staff have also been working with the City of Port Moody regarding emergency access and water servicing. So as noted in the ISL memo attached to the report, the proposal includes new water reservoirs to provide fire flow capacity, potable water storage, and discussions have also included the potential for future interconnections between the municipalities. The revised road network would also include a potential for emergency access options and connections towards Port Moody, notably Hickory Drive connections. Staff have worked with the City of Port Moody where approval is in principle achievable. However, all the requirements would have to be met during subdivision of Phase 1, including engineering designs and approvals from Port Moody and Anmore. So the Saskatchewan Volunteer Fire Department also reviewed the proposal and supported the need for the water reservoir and multiple emergency access routes. While some road sections are steep, they remain within the village's bylaw limits, subdivision control bylaw limits for hillside lands, and a detailed road and fire access design plan will be required at the subdivision stage. At that stage, a further engagement with the fire department will be required. So staff are recommending that development be guided by a master development agreement in order to require all the necessary studies and plans and phasing, which will be registered on title through a Section 219 covenant. So this would establish the frameworks for a phased development of the site and secure key commitments related to infrastructure, environmental protection, and community amenities being proposed. The development is expected to occur in 3 phases over approximately 10 years or more, depending on market conditions. Each phase would require the completion of required studies and infrastructure works prior to proceeding to subsequent phases. This phase approach would help limit construction impacts overall on the site, ensures the infrastructure and emergency access improvements are delivered as the development progresses. The Master Development Agreement template can be viewed in the Attachment 5 to the report and includes required studies and plans and other development considerations, including required infrastructure upgrades in and around the site. Council may wish to provide additional input on proposed conditions to be included in the agreement tonight as well. So something brought up in previous reports, the village currently does not have a steep slope hazard development permit area, although guidelines are being considered through the proposed OCP amendment bylaw number 726/2025, which is being considered by council currently. The OCP identifies steep slopes as areas exceeding 20% in grade, which is commonly used in the region as a trigger for additional technical reviews for an area. The Village Subdivision Development Control Bylaw also includes provisions limiting the creation of lots on slopes greater than 30%. While the intent is to ensure adequate buildable area, subdivision bylaws typically regulate servicing and infrastructure rather than land use and density. So in practice, hillside development is generally evaluated through site-specific geotechnical analysis rather than a strict numeric restriction, and this is common throughout many municipalities. For this reason, staff recommend removing this provision from the subdivision bylaw and instead addressing it through steep slopes, through development permit guidelines, or more flexible provisions in the zoning bylaw that allow consideration of detailed technical assessments to be completed. So for example, several proposed lots on the site along the roadways of Ridge Mountain are located on slopes exceeding 30%, where grading and retaining walls will already be required to construct the road. So in this situation, placing homes downslope may help soften the visual transition from the road and screening those retaining walls while still being supported through geotechnical review to confirm they're safe for their intended use. Traffic impact assessment prepared by Bundit Associates estimate that development would generate approximately 189 to 242 additional vehicle trips during peak hours. Residents would primarily access the site using Kinsey Drive and Windham Crescent, connecting to East Road. The analysis indicates that surrounding intersections have sufficient capacity and would not require road upgrades. The study does identify potential for slightly longer wait times at East Road during the morning peak hours. In the worst case scenario, this would look like a queue about 40 meters long, which would roughly be around 4 to 5 vehicles, but still remains within normally accepted operational limits.
Please, 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 please.
The wildfire hazard assessment has also been updated for the site. The report generally recommends a 10-meter vegetation setback during development and adjacent forested areas to provide defensible space and reduce wildfire risk. In some constrained areas, a reduced setback of approximately 5.5 meters may be considered, provided additional vegetation management measures are implemented and a Section 219 be placed on covenant regarding building materials. This is outlined in the wildfire hazard assessment. The development concept has been refined to generally accommodate the 10-meter buffer where feasible, with the reduced setback applied only in select locations, subject to further design review. The report also confirms that site access and development phasing are intended to ensure that primary access routes and emergency access, as shown in the phasing plan, are established early in each phase so that they can be operating safely as the project builds out. The applicant has offered a voluntary community amenity contribution package consisting of both cash contributions and in-kind contributions. So based on the financial impact assessment prepared by the project, the rezoning is estimated to generate approximately $5.5 million in land uplift value. The applicant has proposed a voluntary contribution package totaling approximately $2.75 million, representing about 50% of the estimated uplift. This includes approximately $2.04 million in cash contributions, as well as in-kind amenities such as park and trail improvements and multi-use pathways along Windham Crescent. Staff note that this contribution level is consistent with other comprehensive development rezonings within the village in the past. Okay. So before I read out the resolution, I'll just have a little snippet on next steps. So in summary, staff have reviewed the application, considered the feedback from committees and external agencies, and worked with the applicant to address technical and design considerations associated with the project. So should council support the application and grant third reading of the bylaw, staff would continue working with the applicant and finalize the master development agreement. Once the agreement is executed and all rezoning conditions are satisfied, the bylaw would then be brought forward to council for consideration of final adoption at a future meeting. Alternatively, should council wish to receive further information or provide staff with additional input to consider the application, council may also wish to provide an alternative motion as shown in the report. So I'll stop there and I'll ask if there's any questions.
Open it up for council for questions. I think there's going to be quite a few questions. So who wants to go first? Councillor Webering.
As you can see, I have many bookmarks. This will be a while. I wanted to ask about the steep slopes. In the Environment Committee, we kind of didn't want to see anything developed more than 30%. But obviously, there's a small portion that's between 30 and 40%. Is that standard practice? I mean, this is not a whole lot different than a steep slope development elsewhere, other than septics. How is that going to be managed, something between 30 and 40%? And is that considered excessive or is that considered normal?
Yeah, through the chair. So you'll actually be pretty hard pressed to see a cutoff anywhere in the Lower Mainland. It's typically a trigger point, which is either 20 or 30%, such as Coquitlam, which then would require detailed technical analysis or geotechnical analysis to confirm that they're safe for the intended uses. Okay, and as you get, if you make it past third reading, you get more into those detailed technical analysis because I can imagine they get expensive. Yeah, like I noted before, development permits are a typical thing in municipalities. We don't have one for steep slopes. Those things are triggered at subdivision stage as well as building permit stage, so both. So for the subdivision of the lands, they get triggered, as well as for building permits. Okay, so at this stage, we're sort of looking at feasibility of all these things. You know, there's, just to ask a broad question, I mean, drainage plans, septic plans, we're at the point where it's feasible. We know it's feasible. And at the subdivision stage, it gets into more detailed design and evaluation. And I guess if you guys find at that time that it's not going to work, then that's it, right? Yeah, through the chair. So right now we have conceptual designs. We don't have detailed grading plans, retaining wall plans. And so, of course, you know, the geotechnical studies will be limited based on the scope of the development. Okay. Nonetheless, it's been stated that is their belief that it's safe for the intended use subject to further detailed designs being proposed and the recommendations outlined in the report. Okay, so, I see. Yeah. Okay, so go through one by one. What is weird?
Can everybody still hear fine? We're having some power issues right now, and that's why the screens are going off and on. So, sorry. If you can not hear anything, please let us know.
Sure.
Just let him. Is it related to what he's?
It looks like 0.6, and that is considered low density. What would say Port Moody townhouses be? Like 0.8 or something? Do you have that answer? Yeah, so through the chair for reference, Port Moody's got various zones for townhome developments and CD zones. Okay. Looking at, you know, anywhere ranging from 0.6, which is, you know, in quotes, low density townhome developments from Port Moody. Okay. Ranging up to over 1. Oh, over 1. Okay. As far as on page 95, landscaping design, I'd really recommend naturescape landscaping practices. I think it's always something we've done in Anmore or encouraged. It's probably better for everybody, better for maintenance, better for the environment. Would that be considered?
Yeah, through the chair, at this point, it's very welcome to provide any input that you'd like to see being considered in the master development agreement or through the zoning bylaw itself. So if you have a comment, I'd write it down and make sure, but, or you provide direction through resolution, yeah.
Okay, yeah, I would love to see that. So the connection to Hickory Drive and Port Moody, it's been supported in principle, but is that going to happen? And I noticed they made a comment about environmental analysis, but I looked at the piece of land that we're talking about, and it's about the size of a driveway compared to what's been developed up there. I'm surprised to hear that comment.
Yeah, through the chair. So we did have discussions with Port Moody, and again, you know, it is acceptable in principle that we've talked about the environmental kind of department as well as engineering.
Okay.
In terms of the Village of Anmore, this is a strict requirement for us for subdivision approval for the first phase.
I see.
So this is something they'd have to achieve, and it's going to be incorporated and regulated in the master development agreement. In terms of options, there's options to avoid any sort of environmental triggers on Port Moody's part because they could simply move it towards the open pad area for the reservoir.
Right.
So that has to be figured out. We don't necessarily, have an ideal. We just need a connection, and however they want to execute that, it'll just be proven out on subdivision phase 1.
Okay, good. So I asked that question. Hydrological investigation. Just to ask a rhetorical question, ISL is satisfied with the reports that they've seen so far. I've had several discussions with residents about how this process goes and, what assurances do we have? Well, we have professional engineers preparing all these reports, and ISL is our peer review engineer, our independent engineer.
Yeah, that's correct. So we'll be reviewing all technical reports as they go forward.
Okay.
Right now, we're satisfied that there is a feasibility that this development could work. As it goes forward into the subdivision stage, that's where far more detailed reports need to be investigated, including investigating the land, drilling holes and such what, and actually monitoring wells to understand how the water is mapped so it can be modeled correctly. Currently, that work has not been done, but it needs to be proven out prior to approval of subdivision because it's all about the public interest.
Right.
In making
And
sure
I just hope that people understand that process because a lot of people that I've talked to don't seem to understand that that is a process and pretty standard in any community, any municipality. So I'm glad to hear that and reiterate it. Steep slope again. Just looking at the CACs, I understand the CACs. I've asked some questions offline. I think I've said it before, even though we have steep slope land that may not have marketable value, it certainly has aesthetic value, it has environmental value. I've always thought that was very important in any sort of CD to have a nice big forest incorporated into the development. So I think there's a lot of value in that. What else have I got in here? Okay, so I was looking at the Environment Committee again, recommendations, introduction of more natural waterways to the plan. So obviously you're going to have a lot of impervious surfaces. It's going to be ditched. It's going to be turned into streams. How would it be dealt with downstream? Obviously, this is not going to perk into the land anymore. It's not going to run through the land down the steep slope. It's going to go into a ditch or a creek. How would that be dealt with off property if it's a problem?
Yeah, so as part of the subdivision bylaw, and it's included in the MDA tonight as a draft, is that an integrated stormwater management plan needs to be developed, which doesn't just look at the development, it looks at all the downstream impacts as well, and looking at what those impacts might be and how those impacts can be mitigated.
Okay.
Some of the ways that you would mitigate it would be through detention.
So a full evaluation of how that water 100%. Is going to get from there.
Yeah, you couldn't let a development cause significant damage downstream. That's
right.
That wouldn't be accepted as the approving officer to say, oh, okay, well, we'll let this be damaged. No, that's
okay. I hope that reassures a lot of people. Enhanced stream side protection with wider buffer. I assume that's going to be meeting the RAP environmental standards. What about enhanced wildlife corridors? That was something we asked for. Is that really just covered in the green space? And, you know, what about wildlife movement through the site? Has that been considered in the proposal?
Through the chair. So when looking at the environmental overview assessment reports, in reality, because it's open forested area connected to larger open forested area, it's all sort of wildlife corridor.
Right.
Apart from the stream sides, which are actually lower quality wildlife corridors. But noting that we do have, you know, some corridors that keep going towards the north, and so that maintains an open corridor. So the portion that's 30% essentially.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, but I mean, yeah, that would, on an environmental impact assessment, which would be required at a further stage, they would further identify any opportunities to provide for wildlife corridor opportunities.
Okay, so once again, as we move forward, we get into those details.
Yeah, so this is, we've have overview assessments right now.
Okay,
Yeah.
good. I think I have an answer to that question. Good with this. Sorry, everybody, just bear with me here. It's a lot of reading. Okay, that was answered.
I think you can see what we spent our Easter weekend going through.
Oh, I have a question. I don't know if you can answer it. Yes, please. Page 563, on the conclusion on fiscal impact study, on the table, what is non-village tax revenues? It's a number, $25 million. So on page 563, there's a table under conclusion. I'll show you. I want them to answer it.
It's DCC's.
Do you see it?
Yeah, I see it. Through the chair, I think I'll just defer to Chris if you have one. No? Yeah, not sure of the answer. Yeah, we've had our financial consultant look over these for all the assumptions. I found it reasonable, but staff itself didn't get to the nitty-gritty of all the line items.
Sorry.
Staff itself has not gone over every line item of the fiscal impact study.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. That's all I have for questions.
If you go to page 11 on the Verbanics report, it kind of gives out a little bit of, in addition to the village share of tax revenue, property taxes from the proposed development also flow to other authorities through the village, including school district, provincial policing, and other regional services. That's on page 11 of the Verbanics report for non-village tax revenue.
I see. Okay. Okay, I get you.
Okay.
Okay.
We'll now go over to Councillor Richardson.
Switch. Most of my questions come from the various reports and are pretty quick. Fire department wanted sprinklers. I didn't find sprinklers in the zoning bylaw. Where does that get coded into, yes, we're going to have them?
So through the chair, that would be covenants, section 219 covenants placed on title. So
that's in the master development agreement?
Correct, yeah.
Okay, because that specifies the covenants that go on.
Yeah, because they'll go on the lots to be created, essentially.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay. So as long as, people will look and they say it's not in there, so where do they look to find it? So that's one. It touches on the development flow that Paul was talking about. Port Moody was talking about 2-year type detention. And if I read the master development agreement that's proposed, I think we have 10 and 100-year detention. I realize it's just a beginning feasibility, but I think it's important for people to understand that there's consideration for the flash rises. Like you have roofs and stuff, it flashes the creek much faster, and detention systems go in to everything, including individual buildings, before it even goes into the stormwater system, right?
Yeah, that's correct. So more or less it's a vessel that the water collects in, and it has a small orifice, so a small area that water can actually come out of, which limits the flow that can be developed out of the detention tank. So it doesn't inundate a system during flash flooding events because the time to concentration is way higher.
And then the only other concern I have there is because we've had sort of 300-year events in the last 5 or 6 years, perhaps 10-year in the sort of minor systems is too low. I don't know what the cost is to make it more. I gather that will come in the detailed sort of stormwater system design. Yes?
Yeah, so that would be consideration into the integrated stormwater management plan as we look through those and the downstream impacts.
Okay. And then the independent assessments, which will come either subdivision or the master development agreement. My understanding is there's different potential levels depending on the level of risk associated. Is that correct? Like there was, you can kind of just look at them and agree, or you can have your independent person, or you go very detailed type thing.
Yeah, so there's kind of 3 levels if you're talking in terms of engineering reviews. There's 3 different types of reviews that can happen. And so there's level 1, level 2, level 3. Level 3 is the highest order where you really interrogate absolutely everything in what's put in front of you. And in many of these situations, it would be a level 3 review that we review the models, the assumptions behind the models, even interrogate the models to ensure that they're actually correct.
So the expectation from Anmore staff is that many of the detailed reports will be level 3 type investigations.
Yeah.
Okay. The comprehensive plan, which was attached to the end of the bylaw, is it just that one picture? Like there's no lot lines, there's no nothing, it's just, so how do you control whether the guy does, because semi-detached and single homes are the same. So are they free to mix and match at will? When does that kind of go into stone?
Yeah, through the chair. So in the zoning bylaw itself, you're looking at sort of land use blobs, you can call them.
Yeah.
In the master development agreement, you have the comprehensive development plan, which you have seen before, which shows the lot lines. It'll have lot dimensions and kind of housing types.
Okay.
So just to reiterate, the reason that happens, Josh gave it in his presentation, is because if for some reason that a road alignment needed to change or what have you, if you show the road right-of-ways within a zoning bylaw, it'd have to come back for a change of the zoning bylaw to allow that to happen, because it's an integral part of the bylaw, whereas the MDA is not part of the zoning bylaw, the covenants.
Okay, so this one's a little bit more sticky. I look at lots of septic fields side by side, and my understanding is Fraser Health has a limit of 22,700 liters per day discharge or something along those lines, which Fraser Health takes care of. And if you go the other way, then the Ministry of Environment takes care of it. And my understanding the Ministry of Environment is way, way tougher than Fraser Health. So is this just a way to get around regulations? And how do you solve that if that's the intent?
I wouldn't want to talk to the applicant's theory on how they intend to do this. I can give a general overview of how the septic systems are designed and how it gets approved.
Yeah.
So you go through a registered professional who is a septic designer, and by the code of conduct of the Engineering Society, they have to ensure that they are meeting requirements.
Yeah.
However, what I can say is that MOE, yes, typically have a harder process to get through because they don't just rely on the RP to do that. So also, the Ministry of Environment do have the right to come in and look at if someone was doing sequential, say, Fraser Health septic systems, and they determine it's like, hey, you're circumventing what we believe should be under an MOE system. MOE very much have the jurisdiction to come say, no, this is now under an MOE permit.
Okay. And how would MOE be alerted to that?
Can I step in? So through the chair, I've had conversations with representatives from Fraser Health who've mentioned they actively refer it to MOE for certain.
Okay, because I think that's a huge concern, and it always looks strange when people have 6 of the same thing all side by side when it could be one big thing. There's been reports and documents about forced septic servicing in covenants, which is the strata, whatever, will have to do it. So that does not come in subdivision, that comes in the MDA on titles on property. Is that the way that works?
So through the MDA, that's the way that we can introduce covenant 219s, and we can only do that as a municipality through a rezoning process.
Okay.
So within those covenants, they can more or less say whatever you like within reason, and so from that on, that is a legal obligation to the landowner to adhere to that covenant. So in this way, there is a way that we could say, hey, a strata must do X, Y, and Z in order to carry on doing this as to be legally compliant, and we would then have powers to go and investigate.
And the intent is to have like yearly servicing by an independent third body on all these fields. I think I read that somewhere.
Yeah, through the chair. So this is part of a staff recommendation to explore maintenance bylaw. So that would give us the authority to require inspection reports. Okay. Yeah.
Okay, and this is another one, and this is a bit of another sticky one, which I haven't quite wrapped my head around. When I go through the plans and the number of square foots built and the recommended floor area ratios, is it with basements or without basements? Because the problem is if it's with basements, which are exempt, the things get really big. Like a 5,000 square foot house, if it was allowed, becomes a 7,500 square foot house. And the townhouse, which is 2,500, ends up to 3,075. So because it's a steep slope, people really like to stick stuff into the hillside and get all these below grade exemptions. And my impression is, like when I do the math, like right now, the current proposal, I think, is about 789,000 feet squared of livable area. That's just the thing as it is. If I don't allow basements and put basements on the single and the semi-detached, it jumps up by another 137,000 square feet. And that changes the financials and everything and all the models. Like, it's a crazy change. And I can't wrap my head around the increase in floor area ratio if basements are allowed and what to do about that, because I think it's too much. So currently, because it's not in the zoning bylaw, the floor area ratios fit into the rest of the zoning bylaw. So all below grade stuff, according to the zoning bylaw, is exempt.
To the chair, under certain parameters outlined in the basement exemption section, correct, yeah. Okay.
I think that's too much. With respect to the fire department, they love the reservoir. I think it's required. It's beautiful. You've done all the hammerheads and everything else, so that's good. Even Port Moody, I believe, likes the water tower for better connectivity and fire flow, so that's good. What comes first? So the MDA gets done in parallel with the subdivision, the MDA comes first, and then they apply for subdivision, or do they kind of run along side by side?
So through the chair, the MDA would be required to be placed on title prior to bylaw adoption. So that zoning bylaw adoption,
okay.
And it'll be followed during the subdivision phase. So it's a regulator for the subdivision phasing.
Okay.
So yeah.
To summary, we do the MDA, they do the MDA, we collaborate on the MDA. This comes back to council for fourth reading, and then the developer is allowed to apply for subdivision.
Yeah, MDA gets placed on title prior to adoption of fourth reading.
Yeah.
And fourth reading happens, subdivision happens, and adherence to the MDA is required.
Okay.
Just to add clarity to that, the way the MDA would work within the covenants will be placed on the existing parcels of land. And as you destruct that parcel into the subdivision, it then gets placed onto every other subdivision parcel.
Okay. And the DCCs, somebody pointed out this, are currently only on lots. And my guess is that will change. Please?
Yeah, so the village is currently undergoing a review of the DCC bylaw to update it.
and it will be done prior to any building, which is probably a fair few number of years away. Okay, fair enough. So, and the last comment I have is because this whole thing was supposed to, which I agree with, is not cause undue burden to the village for infrastructure, recovery, et cetera. And when I look at the costing out that was done in this, like page 553, like, to me, they have a single-family house of 539. When I look at what sells in Anmore, I use Bellaterra, by the way, and recent sales, it's between $750 and $800 per square foot. And when I look at like townhomes around through Burke Mountain, in here it's like 531, and they're 640, 650, 700 bucks. So it seems to me the whole costing is much too low for the justification. So it makes it look like it's a closer justification. The justification is much wider. And my point here is, if the goal is to just make it neutral, revenue neutral to the village on infrastructure, for the most part, factor of 2, what this says to me is we can do with a lot less square footage and still make it revenue neutral. So where did the numbers come? And unfortunately, we didn't get to ask the guy. For the, on page 553, methodology and assumptions in the attachment 13, like there's a bunch of set values for both land and value of the building. I got it, you add the land and the building together and you get prices, and they seem to be, you know, a good 30, 25% below market.
I can kind of take this question. So the village engaged Coriolis to independently review this. I can tell you that there was a fair substantial amount of conversation back and forth between the two consultants. I think the way I would phrase this as Coriolis, because I'm not here to speak for themselves, I would just paraphrase, is that they were comfortable eventually on the numbers that they got to.
Okay. Because I would say if people could buy a home for that in Bellaterra right now, Bellaterra wouldn't be happy, but the purchaser would be quite happy. So it seems misaligned to me. And that's it. Oh, wait, one. Safety committee. A lot of the students will come down walking if they're not in the van parade. There's not an easy access from the east side of East Road to the west side of East Road, sidewalk-wise, safety-wise. And I think that really should be looked at, and I don't know where that gets looked at in this. Like, there is some aspect of not only traffic flow, but people flow for connectivity. So, anyway.
So it's a noted comment for sure. What I would say is that is lands beyond the subdividable lands currently, so that would be something that you could more than likely look at spending CACs on there, or alternatively another area would be DCCs as a increase to service because of development.
Okay, fair enough. But my understanding is for stormwater, if I take a bunch of stormwater and now dump it into the creeks on East Road, and they need to be made bigger, that is a developer. Is
Correct.
Okay, so water flow is a developer and people flow is the village, is what I just heard.
So, yeah. I mean, to some degree, yes is the answer to that. It's a hard one to answer. However, you know, when you look at transportation, this is where it could be argued, to be perfectly frank, in terms of if an intersection didn't meet the requirements of a subdivision, the subdivider would have to upgrade the road capacity to do that intersection.
Okay.
Good. Councillor Trowbridge.
Thank you. So a number of my questions have been answered already by colleagues' questions, but I still have a couple. A lot of the analysis gets done at time of subdivision or when we're getting to the rezoning stage. Is that a typical process for municipalities?
Yeah, I think it varies. You know, sometimes you'll have municipalities will do concurrently subdivision approvals with rezoning adoptions as well. Otherwise, they'll do kind of rezoning and then detailed plans and assessments at subdivision stage as well.
Right.
Yeah.
So third reading is not an approval of this development. There's still lots to come. And just to be certain, the applicant needs to meet all of our criteria that I've read over the destruction of my weekend. They need to meet all of that criteria before we will move forward, correct?
Yeah, correct. So the MDA, the Master Development Agreement, would act as a no-build covenant on the title, subject to completion of everything that is required for each phase of the subdivision.
Okay. A couple of more granular questions. There's a question about Hickory, which is that little extra route up, straight up into Port Moody. Is someone talking to POMO about that now, and have they fundamentally agreed to Hickory? Because I think, when I saw their report, they were talking about retaining trees, and we'd want to move it around a tree or something.
Yeah, through the chair. So we've had discussions with Port Moody, and they've essentially just outlined what is required to approve it. That could be if you are to displace a tree or move a tree, what development permits you have to achieve, or if you put it over here, you may not have to do X or may not have to do, Y. So again, it's up to Port Moody to require whatever they need to approve it, and it's up to the applicant to coordinate with Port Moody as well as the Village of Anmore for our own standards. For us, achieving that connection is what's important. Of course, they'll have to meet Port Moody's requirements nonetheless. So if they find an easier connection, I think it'd be in their best interests, essentially.
Well, I know it's sort of a tertiary connection. We don't actually have to have it to make this function, but they are agreeing?
We would need it for our subdivision control bylaw requirements for emergency access.
Perfect.
Yeah.
So related to that, there is a connection from Road B to Ridge Mountain Drive. Is that the little, you can't see from here, but is that the proposed dotted line out of the center of Road B? That blue one?
Yeah, through the chair, that's correct, yeah.
Yeah, okay. So, and that is a requirement that we're requiring, right? Okay. I think Councillor Weverink asked this, but I'll just make sure. Relative to steep slope, we wanted to keep them, them being the applicant, not to be rude to the applicant, keep them from building on 30% grades. But I see in here that it's an assessment rather than a strict prohibition. I'm assuming, and correct me if I'm wrong, that when we get to the point, each site will be evaluated by a geotech or all of that sort of thing?
Through the chair, that's correct, yeah.
Okay, so then it goes on to say that between 30 and 40% includes lots 14, 21, 23, and 24. And the preamble to that says, however, the lots are partially located within areas. So does that mean partially some of the lots are, or a portion of each of those lots?
So a portion of each of those lots would be located within areas of steep slope of 30% or more?
Okay, so that's where the analysis is on a site-by-site.
In reality, 20% is our threshold for further analysis. So majority of, or large portion of the site would actually trigger a development permit.
They're going to trigger
regardless.
Anyway.
Yeah.
I don't think that's a bad thing. Relative to the CACs, CACs, I believe I've recently learned, is land lift only, correct? guys are
Through
so
the chair,
complimentary.
that's correct, yeah.
Do you just flip a coin? And that's going from, that's not from bare land to development, that's going from what would be permitted in RS1 to the new piece.
Through the chair, that's correct, yes.
Okay. Looking through the breakdown of the CACs, I do not see the reservoir, so we're not counting that as a CAC, so that's a freebie, so to speak.
No, it isn't a freebie. It's in terms of development needs to pay for itself. And in terms of this development at a subdivision stage, the fire flows required would necessitate a need for a reservoir. Therefore, they must provide a reservoir to support this development going forward. However, what I would say is if the reservoir needed to be increased in size to provide more amenity to the rest of the community, that would be a municipal cost on that.
Okay, so it doesn't move forward without it.
Correct.
Okay. Sorry, I'll try to get to the rest of my notes here. I'm jumping around as it shows up in the document. So on the parking, off-street parking, 2 spaces per principal dwelling unit. And then it talks about home occupancy, second suite, et cetera, et cetera. So is that all cumulative? So it's 2, then if you have a business, it's 3, then if you have a suite, then it's 4 off-street. Is that how that works?
Oh, through the chair, the provision of parking is not based on any sort of metric provided for the lots. We still have parking provision requirements within the zone for each lot as well, which have to provide 1 parking for a secondary suite, 1 parking for a principal, and you're right, yeah, 1 parking for home occupation, essentially.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, John.
No, that's fine. Take your time.
What's that? Okay. No, I think I did the calculation on this. The surplus, I'm going to the financial review. Is that okay to ask a question on that, or is that out of scope?
I'll try and answer the question if I can.
Sure. Yeah, so I see the section on the surplus generated by 269 units versus a deficit generated by the 60 units. So to give you the numbers, Chris, it's 5.9 surplus on 269.
Could you just give me the report page
give you
number?
the report page is 4. The package page is 551.
Yep, okay.
So down 2/3 of the way down the page where it talks about annual generation, and one is a surplus of 5.9, the other deficit of 2.9.
Yep.
So on an annualized basis, we're talking about surplus of 197,000. You can trust me, I did the math. Deficit on the other one of 97,000. So is it fair to say if you're comparing the 2 styles of development, the swing is 300 grand a year? Add those 2 numbers together?
I'll go with yes.
Yeah,
Sorry,
well,
yeah, I mean, without doing the math.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Reasonable assessment. Yeah.
Yeah, that's been answered. Yeah, I think that's it for now.
Okay, just briefly. Most of my questions had to do with the subdivision control bylaw and the timing of that with the master development plan. Septic questions, thank you, that was a clarity I needed. I'm curious about wildfire recommendations. How do those fall into the plan and how are they monitored? Is there a post? Well, just tell me.
Yeah, so we have a wildfire hazard assessment done. So
Yeah.
those recommendations, all of them, will kind of be taken and placed on title to be followed, and those will be kind of double checked during subdivision stage and further placed on lots to be developed. And then in coordination with arborists, as well as, fire smart kind of recommendations for trimmings, as well as building material requirements. Yeah.
Okay, rolls right in, that's perfect. Yeah, the recommendations from the committees, that was good. And one more piece of paper, didn't get eliminated. So we'll get through phase 1, and then we'll get into more conversation about Road B and the Ridge Mountain Drive. And the emergency access loop. And then once that's complete, we'll roll into phase 3, where another major connection will have to be made before any more of the residential is built. Is that correct?
Yeah, through the chair, that's correct.
Okay.
So each phase has this kind of requirements for emergency access and secondary road provisions. Again, they could be either Charlotte Crescent or Wyndham Crescent or both.
Okay, very good. And this one has been answered. That's it.
Councillor Richardson.
It's the same kind of question before, like where does it go? Like in the reports documents, I read 10% easy access buildings, which I like. It's very nice to have that. Where does that get stuck? Is that again in the MDA as a covenant?
Yeah, so the wording is that there shall be 10% units.
Yep.
However, that is achieved is, we'll accept covenants on title to be carried forward for a building permit or otherwise achieved other way.
Okay, so when I read the whole thing, and look at all the house sizes, et cetera, I've said this before, they're quite large. Yeah, is there any plans, numbers for instead of a 2,500 square foot townhome, 13 or 1,400 square foot townhome, specifically something that's at a lower cost? It's been mentioned here many times before, we need something for young families specifically, to feed the volunteer fire department. And I didn't see anything in there on control of potential sizes. Could we do that?
Yeah, through the chair, we haven't controlled the size of town home developments, just the overall FAR. But we've also included secondary suite requirements to be built out through construction for rental opportunities. But that's not something we haven't considered, but we can consider with the recommendation.
But where do we consider that? Is it in the zoning bylaw now, or is that a small change that could be done before fourth reading?
Depends. It could get complicated in the zoning bylaw if you have certain portions being X, certain portions be Z. But it could also be controlled in the master development agreement. It's quite flexible.
Okay. But you haven't had conversations with the developers on that?
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm going to start off just to follow up with what Councillor Richardson said. When the previous development, which was the Anmore South, they had a certain aspect of under market housing as well as rental housing. Is there anything affiliated with this at all?
Through the chair, thanks. That hasn't been considered. It's quite difficult to kind of achieve for Hillside. We haven't fully explored that opportunity in this development.
And just curious, why is that? It just hasn't come up, or is it something that we're going to pursue, or?
Based on council direction, we could explore it. We just don't have policies to support it at this moment.
Okay. I just wanted to kind of give everybody kind of a bit of an understanding, because we're giving some terms here that maybe some people won't fully understand. So giving something third reading isn't in essence, like has been said, shovels in the ground and everything's going to be moving. There's a lot more work to be done. Fourth reading will come back to council. It's council's last sort of touch point regarding this development and approvals. Unfortunately with that, there's any substantive change to third reading, or from third reading to fourth reading, third reading then has to get rescinded, and we have to redo the process over again. So this is kind of council's last opportunity from the 5,000 foot level to really have an influx on that. Is that correct, Mr. Boyd? Or Mr. Joseph? Yeah. I just wanted so everybody understands what's...
Yeah, I mean, so in reality, a large portion of the regulations are in the zoning bylaw. If you're happy with the zoning bylaw, it can go forward for adoptions. There could be amendments to also the master development agreement, and that could be an iterative process. So we can come back prior to adoption. We don't have to come back to council for adoption purposes. We can come back with a summary of updates as well.
And what would prompt that?
Further council direction. I mean, we will come back with a introduction or a summary of a finalized kind of agreement, and then provide an option for further input.
Because from what I was understanding, a lot of this after third reading is going to be on the shoulders of our approving officer.
Yeah, through the chair. So this is the point of the master development agreement to be placed on title prior to rezoning. It's essentially conditions of subdivision.
So would council approve though the master
correct,
development?
Yes, yes.
So we do have a step in between third and fourth reading.
That's correct.
That's what I'm just trying to, make it.
One thing I would say as part of the MDA, you still have to look at the impact that it might have to the zone. You can't neglect changing this MDA and putting new kind of zoning regulations within the MDA, because that's circumventing the actual zoning bylaw. So there's only certain things you can cover on this. So you couldn't say go into the MDA, I'm going to make a grandiose thing. You can go to the MDA and suddenly say, we're going to allow 600 units if they meet this bar. That wouldn't be allowed, right? So there's only certain things you can kind of add to it within the MDA.
From third to fourth reading, you can't increase density, is that correct?
We'd have to consult the lawyers, but in my opinion, that would be correct. You cannot increase density within like the MDA.
Right. So the MDA or this master development, MDC, or what is that, or master development agreement will be coming back to council with all the particulars, and that we will have more input into that. I just want everybody to be able to understand that. So.
Yeah, through the chair. So I did provide a template on attachment 5. This gives you like a rough idea of the parameters that we're dealing with. And with that, of course, it adheres to everything in the zoning bylaw, including the density caps, as well as further density caps for certain arrangements. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, a couple questions. The fiscal impact study, I went through it fairly, and I just wanted to make people aware. So they used the analysis was a 60-unit subdivision, which is a 1-acre subdivision. I think everybody should know in here that be aware that the approving officer has the authority to approve or turn down a proposed development as if it delivers a demonstrable and overall benefit to the community, socially, environmentally, or economically. So in basic terms, even though the land may be zoned RS1, it's still up to the approving officer whether or not it gets developed as part of the power of the approving officer, which I just pulled out of the Local Government Act.
Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah. So on the 60-unit subdivision, it's a $2.9 million deficit over 30 years, it states, and a $5.9 million surplus over 30 years on the 269 subdivision. It was in the report. So a couple of questions here. The park, which is something that was very dear to me because I was previously chair of the Parks Committee, and we actually planned the actual doing a parks master plan and got the people to come into it. And I just want to highlight a couple things that are in the park acquisition guidelines, because we really struggled with this as a municipality when we did, and it says that lands up to a 10% slope may be considered only if they can be graded to 5% to accommodate park uses. So to call this a park is a bit of a stretch. It's really open space, and I don't think it's going to be used for much. And then it does talk about environmental aspects and that. Is there a lot of, would you say there's environmental attributes of this slope, or?
Through the chair, what do you mean by environmental attributes?
Is there like creeks or we haven't determined that quite yet?
No, yeah, there is identified creeks, whether they're regulated under riparian areas or WSA. There's both of that, quite frankly.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then I think this is just a follow-up. I just need some clarity. So in the letter from the fire department, it stated that the north end of Road A, which I guess is that top one, should be a full cul-de-sac providing adequate turnarounds for emergency vehicles. The south end of Road A should be at least a hammerhead configured. Has that been done in the new updated plans?
Yeah, through the chair, so they're all hammerhead connections with access to roads beyond.
So what about the ask for the full cul-de-sac on the
So
one?
I think previous iterations didn't go fully towards the property lines.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. The emergency access routes from Road A, you've actually talked about this, are a requirement for this area based on the length of Road A and because of Mountain Drive, so you already commented on that. Failing to extend Charlotte Crescent, yeah, okay, that's that. It also states very clearly that all road grades should not exceed 12%. Is that?
So the letter stated that, you're correct, Mayor McEwen. However, the village does have a subdivision control bylaw which allows up to 15%. And so we, as the approving officer, Josh and I would be reviewing the subdivision control bylaw for requirements and not the letter.
So it does say, and this was pulled off of the Pinnacle Ridge Hillside thing, that all roads at Pinnacle Ridge will meet village standards for hillside developments, including full municipal road widths that safely accommodate emergency vehicles and equipment specifications, not narrow or reduced width access. Also, all road grades across the project will comply with village bylaws. So does that mean all the roads then will be the 20-meter road wide array as well as being of a grade of 12%?
So again, they're allowed up to 15% grade as per our subdivision control bylaw.
Okay, so it's 15%.
Yeah, it's 15%. How, you know, and when you come to the road right-of-ways, yes, they must meet those requirements of subdivision of 20 meters.
Okay.
Actually, the cross-section of the road shown within the development is actually above and beyond what our current road cross-section requirement is for the village of Anmore, because we currently don't show requirements for parking either side of our roadways.
In regards to the port letter from the Port Moody, so it simply states the city is including existing. Basically, I think I actually refreshed and signed this contract again in 2018, and it states any development needs to be signed off by the city of Port Moody as it's approved here. But it does say that the city has included the existing Anmore demands only and are unable to confirm if there is available system capacity for the proposed Pinnacle Ridge development. Upon completion of a Port Moody City review, Anmore can request to conduct and fund additional modeling using the city's new master water model and approve consultants to determine if additional capacity is available to support growth in Anmore. So I've got two questions. Has the city review been done? Has the Port Moody City been done?
As I'm aware, currently they're still undergoing their review. I've not seen a finalized report from Port Moody currently.
It has or hasn't?
I have not seen a completed report currently.
Okay, so it hasn't. Has Anmore, so then Anmore hasn't done any modeling regarding the city master plan at all?
So the village has its own water model currently. So we have based that currently on, we are not throttled in terms of how much water Port Moody delivers to us currently. That is not within the current water agreement either. It just, as Mayor McEwen stated, they have the right to review and approve basic development as per the water agreement.
So we're kind of at their mercy, so to speak, in regards, do you think, is there any worry that this could bring changes for our existing water agreement? Because I believe they have some clauses in there that they can withdraw out of it at any point.
The agreement does have those clauses that both parties can terminate the agreement if they choose within it. I would say the likelihood of them not providing water to us is relatively low. Again, one of the biggest risks to the village of Anmore is when we have a fire event happening within the village and a fire event within Port Moody. To be perfectly frank, if there was a fire event happening in Port Moody, they would likely throttle back our flows because they're looking after their development first. And
Okay.
so that's just the nature of the connection we currently have with Port Moody.
I think somebody's already touched about this, about the missing report, about the Geopacific is requiring that we do a lot more hydrological assessments for the septic fields. I think that's already been commented on. This is the big one, and it kind of follows up with what Councillor Richardson was talking about in regards to the septics. So in your report, you say staff are also recommending the septic maintenance bylaw be developed to require periodic inspection reports for hillside properties to ensure systems continue to function as needed. How is that going to come about when we have no involvement in septics from a municipality point of view, number one? Number two is I've tried over the last year to get somebody from Fraser Health to come out and talk about some of the issues that we're having here with communal septics, and he basically told us that there wasn't sufficient manpower to be able to attend a meeting. And the third reason is the fact that quite often, and I won't pinpoint areas, but we've had issues that people phone me up and I said, I'm sorry, you're going to have to call this number. And they're like, well, nothing's happening. So I'm a little bit curious how we can put something on title that we can enforce.
Yeah, so in reality, it's a bylaw. We would put something on title to ensure that, those things are in accordance with their agreements for Fraser Health, which would obviously be regulated by Fraser Health. But on top of that, the village has the authority to protect public safety. And so a bylaw could be drafted to regulate the annual or any sort of timeline inspections of septic systems for a defined area, such as the hillside. And at that stage, we would require annual inspection reports from each landowner or lot that has a septic for compliance measures, and we would have enforcement fees also involved for any sort of infractions. And so that would give us the power to kind of address the septic failures
I agree with everything you're
proactively.
saying.
Yeah.
I wish that we did this here now, but I've been told we can't. So I don't understand. Have you seen this practiced anywhere?
Yeah, I've been in talks with other municipalities on the island specifically
okay.
that have done this, and we've had some talks about what that could look like.
Yeah, because I've often argued elevators in houses have to get inspected on a yearly basis. Septic systems don't, and they can have such damaging effects to the environment and further down. Mr. Boyd.
Yeah, so I can give you, it's not septic systems, but something which relates to public safety. I know the City of Delta actually implemented a bylaw in relation to making sure the double check valves, which are a water essential to stop backflow of bad water going into the municipal system. They introduced that bylaw within the municipality, which had documented fees required for it, and making sure people issued that they are inspected and what have you. So I would say it would be something along those lines, similar, that you must prove that you have done your due diligence on your system on a yearly basis.
So just to chime in, of course, if council gives direction, further exploration will be done by staff, including, checking off legal requirements and authority that the village can regulate the maintenance of septic systems.
I think it's worth a lot more exploring, definitely. I wasn't aware that we were able to do it because we had talked about it on many occasions, the challenges that we were having. And I know Ms. Elrick and I talk about when all of a sudden something hits the media about stuff we aren't even aware of it. And I think, Mr. Boyd, you and I were in Victoria, and we actually asked the Minister of Environment, going, could you please let us know, because we have no idea, to find out about it in the media. And then we have people phoning us and coming to the office here going, what's going on? It's not a great system that's right now. And we were told very explicitly from the minister or the Fraser Health people that they just didn't have the manpower to do any investigations.
Yeah, that's correct. We did hear that.
So, retaining walls. So with this, if this were to move forward, will there be any need for retaining walls above what is already in our current zoning bylaw?
Yeah, through the chair, no. This is something we've been talking with the applicant about.
Okay.
We want to ensure that we stick with our current heights and retaining wall regulations. Anything on a case-by-case basis could be subject to development variance permit. But again, it's not just because you want it, you get it. It's, there has to be a technical rationale for it.
Yeah.
I think one of the things as well that staff are looking for is we don't want to see a scar on the hillside, which could be created by, say, a 6-meter retaining wall. So hence why we want to stay within the zoning bylaw of those stepped systems, so we don't have one large face of concrete looking down.
A really good read for myself anyway, going through this report, was to look back at the regular council agenda from July 16th, 2019, and that was the first proposal that went in from the Therese, and at the time it was the Addy Group. I think they then disbanded after this proposal, and they've but in it, it actually states that that we do not allow any that the applicants to avoid locating any development on the steepest portions of the properties. Those were staff's recommendations, that the slope greater than 30%, that there shouldn't be any development on there. So what is changed from that proposal to this proposal? Or is it the same?
Yeah, so from a staff perspective, I haven't laid eyes on those kind of reports and what was provided in terms of technical assessment or analyses, so I can't speak to that.
Okay, I'm going to be referencing a bit in the CACs as well, because they had a CAC proposal at that point as well, but I'll do that later on. I think following up with Councillor Richardson, the FAR. I'll tell you, I have a tough time with it. I always like to change things over into square footage. So on the one single-family dwellings, 8,073 square feet is how big the lot is. So that's it's less than a quarter of an acre, I guess. It's a little bit quarter. Therefore, you could build a 5,000 square foot house on an 8,073 square foot house, according to the FARs that are in this table. And that's 0.30, so that, and that includes a basement as well as the garage exemptions.
I don't have the math in front of me. I'll trust your math is correct. I said I don't have the math in front of me that you have. It sounds about correct.
To give people in perspective, there's a house for sale down on Ravenswood, at the end of Ravenswood in Magnolia, for $3.7 million. It's 5,200 square feet. It's a big, like Councillor Richard said, it's a big massing house. And then with the duplexes at a 9,688 square foot lot with a 4.36 floor area ratio with basements, those are about 3,200 square foot per duplex. They're big you if you include the basements. So it'd be interesting to find out. I believe that the FAR does not include basements, but it also that these sizes would also be dictated of how much of the basement is below grade and the grading in that. It's really interesting because I know that when we did infill, we used Ravenswood very much as a benchmark as to what rural was. And I don't think it was a 5,000 square foot on an 8,300 square foot lot. So it's just, it's a comment that I'll, and then finally, the infrastructure for Kinsey Drive. So in your report, it says such improvements may include, but basically that the road is going to need to be considerably widened. Is there 20 meters there for that road on Kinsey Ride to be able to facilitate the construction?
I don't have the answer off the top of my head for the Kinsey Drive, the existing Kinsey Drive.
The existing Kinsey that goes right up to the very top where they're building that house right at the top.
Yeah, so through this subdivision, they'll need to be increased to 20, and also the infrastructure on that roadway will likely need to be upgraded. So not the road width particularly, but the infrastructure underneath the ground, such as the water mains, the storm sewers, and more than likely the asphalt and the curb and gutter by the end of this this development.
Okay. I will do one last before I just switch it over. The CACs, I'll finish off with that. I guess what, in the report, which is on page 22 or 107, the development actually, it actually references CD7, which is Cordovados, which is kind of interesting. And the reason that it's interesting is I did an analysis. I actually pulled up the Cordovado plan here from April 26, 2019 that we actually approved. So I was able to compare, and in it, it talks about the CAC. So the CAC for Cordovado was going from, where was it here? It was so the total site for Cordovado was 13.41 acres. It proposed 5 half-acre lots, 14 third-acre lots, plus 4.36 acres of open space. It also, which equated to about 32.5% of the parcel. None of it is classified as steep slope. Plus, it also added an additional third of an acre, which Sunnyside laid on. So using that third of an acre at $1 million, community amenity contribution of $493,500 cash, that was a pretty, and we also got another, and all that land as well. Like it's for getting an extra 5 lots, seems like a fairly big. It was 1.42 units per acre. So they actually had got 6 lots. And so the CAC contribution, excluding land, excluding trails, which they had to pay for as well, was about $2 million on that. So just, if you referenced it here in your report, so I just wanted to kind of pull up what the comparison was here. So anyway, that's all the points that I have at this point right now, but I'll move it up if we can put a motion on the table, and then we'll follow it up with some comments, finish things off.
Thank you. So the recommendation on the table tonight is that Anmore zoning amendment bylaw number 699/2024 be amended as shown in attachment 1 to the report dated April 2nd, 2026, entitled Pinnacle Ridge rezoning application bylaw number 699/2024, third reading by the Manager of Development Services, and be reread a second time as amended, and that the zoning amendment bylaw number 699/2024 be given third reading, and that council direct staff to secure a master development agreement prior to rezoning related to the zoning amendment bylaw number 699/2024 as outlined in attachment 5 to the staff report dated April 3rd, 2026.
Could I get someone to move that? Moved. Anybody second it? I'll open up for some final comments, and then we're going to vote. So, Councillor Weber.
We've been talking about this property for a long time, and this lucky council has had to deal with 2 of the biggest proposals in Anmore ever. And don't think it's been easy, because it hasn't. But we talk about many things in Anmore.
Shh, please, order.
Excuse me, I have the floor. We talk about many things in Anmore. We talk about different forms of housing. We talk about financial sustainability. And when I started on this council, we were in a rough spot financially. I think we've made a lot of good choices about changing that. We're never going to get everything we want in any development proposal, but I think this does tick a lot of boxes for me, and I think this staff report, it's hard to argue with it. They've done their due diligence. The developers have provided the reports. Our staff has vetted the reports. One thing I like about this development is it's way up on the hill. It's not going to affect Anmore proper. It's going to provide those alternate forms of housing.
Please,
excuse me.
Please.
So for that reason, I'm going to be supporting it.
Any comments? Councillor Richardson.
This is a difficult choice to make. I recognize that. We have a choice. We can do RS1. There's no requirement for any reports, diligence, or anything. They can apply for subdivision today. That gives us 180 units up there, if I'm assuming carriage house and suite in every one of the 60 lots. If they're clever, they can double that with infill and put 360 units up there. At great more density in floor area than what's being proposed. We could also do CD, just 1/3 acre lots, but you end up with 360 units. So somewhere between what we can do today and what's being done both in Bellaterra and Cordovato is between 180 and 360 units. So I don't have an issue with the 257 units. I struggle a bit with the 320, but I can probably get my head around that little piece of it. I like the alternative housing. I think that's the thing that came most from the Icona thing, is the majority or vast majority of Anmore actually supported some alternative form, and it's not a tower, and it's not a 6-story mass timber structure, it's townhomes. And there seems to be a shortage of those around. Like Burke Mountain has a few, but for the most part, they're not so there. What I struggle with most is the FARs. Like I said that on day 1, and I said that last year, and I'll say it again today. We have lots of exemptions. We have below grade exemptions. We have basement exemptions. We have garage exemptions. And that means that the little house that sounds so small is actually not that small. So, you know, this current thing is 0.35 with basement for a single family, 0.45 with basement for the semi-detached. And even if I take the 0.6 floor area ratio for the townhouses and say no below grade exemptions, that's like 940,000 square feet. It's a whack. So I haven't been able to wrap my head around the FARs. This is the thing that gets me. I completely believe that doing a CD zone versus an RS1 zone, much better for Anmore. I don't think the RS1 should go on the hillside. The OCP currently says it. We're not violating the OCP in any way that I can see and understand, and I've asked people if you think we are, point it out, and nobody has yet. So the question is, what would I accept? And I haven't had this development with the developer, but you know, somewhere in here between what's currently proposed and what's there is probably an answer. So what would I accept? If the floor area ratios were 0.3 with full exemptions as they are today for single family detached. I also accept 0.3 for the semi-detached if with basement, if you twist my arm a little bit, you know, I may be able to squeeze that to 0.35 because you stick them together. For the townhomes, I would say 0.45, but that's the exact same as 0.3 with basement. So I will go to 0.50 without any below grade exemptions. And I think that's a balance between what we currently have. And if I would actually like to make an amendment, that we change the floor area ratios from what they currently are to 0.3 with full exemptions for a single family detached, 0.3 with base, or I'll go 0.35 with basement for semi-detached. The first one was single detached, and 0.5 without below grade exemptions for townhomes.
Do I have someone to second it? I'll second it for discussion.
I've already discussed. I have nothing more to say.
Okay. Anybody else want to comment on it? Just the amendment?
Just the amendment.
No? Okay. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I think that an amendment on the FAR at this stage of the game would change the economics considerably. And I think we've had, you know, this has been, I don't know, between 5 and 10 years in coming. And at third reading seems an odd time to alter the FAR arbitrarily, especially when it's, I could accept, or I think, and no disrespect, but it's not really based on any science. You have to have affordability. Your FAR is going to be high relative to a townhome development because land and construction factor into the net house price. And one of the things that I'm fairly excited about is the fact that we're actually doing something with an alternate housing form, something that could be, and I won't use the word affordable, but less expensive. Possibly bringing younger families in, possibly giving places for people to downsize. In order to have a low FAR, you're going to have more land per building, and it's going to be a more expensive building. Kind of defeats the whole townhouse premise. So I'm not very supportive of that.
Okay. May I just comment on that? So when you say there's no science, fair enough, but I went through the financials, and I went through every lot and every floor area ratio, and if you look at what they're proposing, right, the actual numbers they put in, it's close to 0.45 on with basement on single family detached. So 0.3 gives them that. Likewise, the 0.35 on the semi-detached gets them very close to what they're currently proposing. Likewise, the 0.5 is very close to the 0.6 if you take away the below grade exemptions. The problem with the below grade exemptions is your townhome of 2,500 square feet now becomes near 4,000 square feet. And I don't think that's the intent. And no disrespect to the builders, when somebody puts a floor area ratio down, and I've watched this in Bellaterra, they tend to build to the max. And right now in the proposal, they're not at the max. So they sell the lot, whatever happens to be, and somebody comes and builds the max. There's no way to control that at all once it's in zoning. So the only way to control it is put a limit. Like, I think if we're gonna go to a highway, I think the speed limit's too high, and I don't want people to go over the speed limit. And I know everybody will go up plus 10% past. So, you know, it's going to be bigger than they're talking about because they haven't maxed out in their numbers, and there's incentive always to build bigger because there's more profit if you're bigger. Anyway, that's my law.
Good. Any other comments before I call the question on the amendment? All those in favor of the amendment? Opposed? Motion's defeated. Thank you. Okay. So any comments on the whole thing? Okay. Comments on the whole proposal before we put it to a vote? Okay. Okay. I've got a few here. I guess because I've been around so long. One of the big things for me was always that Charlotte Crescent needed to be connected. We actually defined that in our roads master plan for the hillside to be developed. And I'm very disappointed that that isn't happening. I'm even more disappointed that a couple of the property owners who've reached out to me commenting that they were wanting to participate with granting access, but were not properly, felt they weren't properly compensated. Hickory Road into Port Moody seems like a stretch requiring the various studies, and Wyndham to me doesn't really solve much of an emergency access problem with its proximity to Kinsey Drive. Septic, again, challenges with the communal systems. I've always had those. Ownership and maintenance. The big difference with an owner, he has to maintain the system as he holds the permit and can be fined. You know, I'm curious to find out about who's going to look after these communal things. The community amenity contributions. You know, it was interesting because after Bellaterra, it was a bit of the Wild West in regards to community amenity contributions, and it was all dependent. There was no formula, there was no plan in place, and I kind of felt bad for the development community as others because I just didn't know what was going to be coming their way. And during Bellaterra, even at the last minute, you know, they got hit with, I think it was a $75,000 or $100,000 charge just for, it just didn't seem fair to me. So we, as a council, brought in JP Rollo and Associates when infill was established, and they did a very significant analysis of CACs, and that was what infill was based on. This in Therese and Atty, that proposal that I talked about in 2019, it was based on it as well, which was about $2 million and 50% of the land, which is more, and it was only an extra increase of about 60 units. And then, you know, just after furnishing the village 150K myself last week, for info, to get another title to be able to sell an ownership, I just feel the proposed CAC it falls way too short of fair. The analysis, so many reports are still to be done in ISL. I counted them, 13 reports. You know, the unknown of the water supply from Port Moody seems to be significant to me. These reports, I'd like to see these reports. You know, undocumented groundwater runoff as viewed. I was asked to meet with residents from 6 properties who live off of East Road and the back of their properties for development. And I saw large pools of surface water as well as significant creeks that were unidentified in the reports to date. So I'm hoping these new reports identify a lot of these because I couldn't believe how much water was flowing. And, you know, I'm hoping other members, council took them up on their offer to see for themselves what was going on with the amount of water that was flowing in the backyard. I, for one, do not feel comfortable offloading the scrutiny of a lot of these reports to be evaluated and approved by our planner and our approving officer, especially the significance of this proposal. And I firmly believe we were elected to approve or not approve as elected representatives of this village residents. I'm also concerned with the most recent rezoning in Cordovado that a couple very significant matters were missed, such as a rough-in for sewer pipes as well as a wider road network during the subdivision stage to allow for parking and emergency access. And then just finally, I just want to publicly reiterate the following. I do believe that the property owners along the hillside have a right to develop their properties, as they are all zoned RS1. I also have said publicly that they need to work together to develop a plan due to accessibility and infrastructure costs. During the last OCP, specific direction and focus was given to the hillside in 2014 to ensure clustering to prevent housing on grades greater than 30%. I've stated numerous times that I believe there is enough 1-acre estate lots already in Anmore, and I'd personally like to see smaller homes on smaller lots balance out our existing inventory, such as birchwind on quarter-acre lots, or even slightly smaller in clusters. Over 3 years ago, the developer asked to meet me and get my thoughts on this proposal coming forward on the hillside. At that meeting, I was shown a map of extensive housing on the hillside. I then asked, how would this be serviced by septic? I was told that the plan was to hook up to the newly created Anmore Green Sewer. I said that I don't think that was at all possible, as this was forced upon us by the province to solve a problem. It was only sized and had capacity for the 52 homes. I also stated that this would force all of Anmore to switch to an urban designation within Metro Vancouver. I further stated during that meeting that I would have very difficult time accepting any more communal septic systems in this village due to the problems that we've had. When the latest Pinnacle rendition came forward, I was completely opposed to the notion that it complied with our existing OCP, which I should mention was also shared by the planner of the applicant, as they had suggested an OCP amendment with the application as well. However, the manager of development services stated he did think it did, and council agreed, so the application then went straight to the rezoning stage, limiting public engagement through Bill 44. Respecting council's direction, I voted in favor of both first and second readings to gain more insight and understanding of what's being proposed. Also during this period, changes quite often occur as feedback is given. Unfortunately, all that I've learned has me asking, why are we bringing in urban density with only having rural services in a very delicate and expensive area of a village to develop? I also feel that the concerns of the Saskatchewan Volunteer Fire Department, Mossam Creek Hatchery haven't been fully addressed in this proposal. And with that, my principles, I will definitely not be supporting giving third reading to bylaw 666-2024. Please, thank you. Thank you. So, thank you. Please. With that, I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Oh, I thought she said that it would be written down. It's written down. Oh, okay. Okay. Councillor Richardson and Mayor McEwen opposed. Okay, we'll move on now to the... Yeah.
Sorry, yeah, I just wanted to express that there's been interest for council to explore a septic bylaw. So along with third reading, it may be a direction to direct staff to explore a septic maintenance bylaw for the proposal.
I think all of us would be, okay. Yeah, absolutely, yeah. Do you have a motion or something? Could you draft something?
Yeah. That council directs staff to explore a septic maintenance control bylaw.
Okay. Someone to move that? Move second. Any more discussion? See none. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you for adding that in. Okay. We'll move on to Operation Center upgrades feasibility report. Mr. Boyd.
Okay.
You're up.
Yeah, just waiting for the crowd to leave here and get going. Yeah. So the purpose of this report is to provide council with an overview of the feasibility study completed by ISL in collaboration with Jacob Brothers Construction and KP Architecture for the proposed upgrade of the Village of Anmore Operations Centre.
Sorry to interrupt, but I cannot hear anything.
If we could ask you if you wanted to have a conversation, if you could just leave the building, that would be great. Thank you. Or leave the room. Okay.
Can I, point of order? The people at the back, could you leave the room, please, if you're going to converse? I will speak loudly. So the purpose of this report is to provide Council with an overview of the feasibility study completed by ISL in collaboration with Jacob Brothers Construction and KP Architecture Limited for the proposed upgrade of the Village of Anmore Operations Centre. This report summarises the key findings, significant cost drivers, and provides staff recommendations for Council's consideration. So the Village of Anmore Operations Centre serves as the base for the public works. This includes waterworks, roadworks, parks maintenance, and seasonal operations. The current facility is inadequate for the operational needs for the village. Previous council resolutions established a budget of approximately 1.5 million for the improvements of the operations centre. These budgets were roughly divided between brine facility upgrades and allocation of the provincial building community funds for the operational centre. So during the January 13th council meeting, council received a report dated Jan 9th, 2026 regarding the operations centre, which directed staff to engage ISL engineering to prepare a validation report through an integrated project delivery approach. Prior to completing the validation report, the group felt it was important to produce a feasibility report as the scope of the project needed further refinement prior to signing a formal IPD contract, as the contract would create obligations for all parties. Okay, so the feasibility study proposes the construction of a new two-storey engineered steel building on the lower works yard measuring 90 feet by 60 feet with a 24-foot eave height. The building would provide a main floor vehicle parking and storage bay designed for heavy fleet equipment, including fire apparatus, a workshop area and general stores for each operational department, a main floor office, barrier-free washrooms, a kitchenette and shower facilities, an upper floor with staff offices, kitchen, common area, and supervisor office and additional store spaces. The surrounding works yard would also reorganize and upgrade to address existing site deficiencies, including grading, drainage improvements, water main servicing, surface paving, fencing and security, and stormwater management infrastructure. The Class D estimate prepared by the IPD team identifies a total project budget of $3.377372, broken down as follows. The operational building, approximately $2 million, works yard upgrades, approximately $550,000, and consultants at $330,000, which comes to an approximate total of $2.9 million. They also note that there's risk allocations of approximately $463,000, which totals a budget of just under $3.4 million. So as you can note, this is way above the original estimate for the project. Some of the main cost drivers which have been identified through this feasibility study are the geotechnical conditions, which relate to uncontrolled fill and potential contamination. I'll break this down that when the works yard was originally built, they took unknown fill and kind of placed it and didn't compact it and control that fill. So there's basically uncontrolled fill, which means it hasn't been compacted to the way you'd want to place a building on top of it. So therefore, there's a significant cost to excavate down to a bearable soil for foundations, which have added a significant cost to this building at this point in time. In addition to that, it's also recommended that the soil be tested for contamination, as at this point we don't know if there is any contamination within that soil. The likelihood is probably low, based on some anecdotal evidence that's been provided to me that this was fill excavation from people's homes from back in the day that was placed there, so it's unlikely to have high levels of contamination, but at this point it's an unknown, it's carried as a risk.
Does contamination mean old cars and tractors and such?
I hope not. Another point that is put in the report here is an increased building footprint to accommodate fire operations. So the building is slightly longer in depth to accommodate the fire apparatus, which we actually only need a roughly 60 by 60 foot building, but as noted earlier, it's actually a 60 by 90 foot. So this additional square footage is approximately $250,000 in additional costs. Okay, so some things that have been identified and are critical as the operations yard moves forward is
Fire protection, the works yard currently does not have adequate fire protection. There is no hydrant or water main established on that piece of property. It's actually only serviced via a domestic water service, which does not provide enough fire flow for fighting fires. There's no emergency power and lighting, so when there is an emergency, the operators currently use their cell phones to light the way so they can see what they're doing. There isn't adequate fuel and chemical storage to make sure it's compliant and safe. And lastly, the stormwater management systems there are not adequate in terms of oil usage and if there are any spills to ensure that the environment is protected. Following on from that, in the report I provided a brief overview of the IPD process. I think it's important that if council wished to proceed with the project, the next step would be for the village to enter into a CCDC 30 contract with the consultants, Jacob Brothers and the IPD team, including the village. And the contract is a standard Canadian construction contract which specifically is developed for the IPD process and establishes a collaborative risk-sharing framework between the owner, designer and contractor. Currently, the village has engaged the team on an hourly basis and has no legal commitment to proceed with the project. This is important, especially at this point in time. As you can see, the budget is exceeding what has actually been allowed for the construction of this operational centre. So if we actually formally sign a CCD contract, the village would be under obligations to proceed and actually pay out people to a certain point. So currently, you'll come to the recommendation, I don't recommend we sign this contract currently until we actually have a correct funding model in place or council decide they actually want to proceed with this process or not. General schedule, if council provide direction, detailed design would be confirmed following this meeting. It would go into Q2 to Q3 of 2026. Procurement of materials would happen in Q3 of 2026. The materials really be in the steel frame structure. There's a long lead time into that. The team would look to purchase it to secure the price as soon as possible. And then construction would likely start in Q2 of 2027. We could probably start in Q1, however, with the weather constraints and stuff in Q1, it's not a very desirable place to start mass excavation, so we would push it into the spring, with completion being roughly 6 months worth of duration. So from a staff perspective, staff recommend that council direct staff to report back to council with refined cost estimates, which should include confirmed geotechnical and environmental findings and a funding strategy prior to proceeding with signing a formal CCDC contract, as a sign of the contract would initiate the project to proceed to a validation and detailed design phase, at which point the village would be committed to invest in substantial funds to progress the project.
So a couple things right off the bat. I believe that we should just simply receive this report at this point in time. This is significantly over the budget that we had allocated. Not to say that it is it's a critical important part of infrastructure that the village needs. However, I think that it's worthy on two fronts. Number one is that do we spend this much money and put a building on land that is not actually ours? We have a rider on it from the province. The province actually owns the land where the public works is. I think we need to firm up that they would be fine with this permanent structure. Number two is I think that the trustees here have to meet with the other trustees to see what plans are going to be in place in regards with Belcarra, and that was part of the purpose of why there was a significant higher draft done with MFA regarding if we needed to get some extra financing out of them so we could secure that financing. But I do think inevitably what we could be moving forward was just, did you say the full site analysis, the soils and everything has all been done now, or?
So we've done preliminary geotechnical information. There's still some pieces that need to be done. The real risk item is actually the contamination determination, so that could be done by taking samples, and there's a relatively low cost associated with that.
I think it would be worthwhile to make sure that we know exactly everything there is about the site so that we know what we can build there. But my suggestion is that we receive it right now. We could follow up with a letter to the province in regards to their willingness as well. Maybe they would just sign it over to us, the land, which would be great, so that we know that we're not and then second of all is to wait to our next trustee meeting to be able to ask and find out what Belcarra is planning on doing. And I think that there's actually one other thing, and we should actually look at just getting a temporary structure. We'll find out what at the fire trustee meeting, what would be just a temporary structure in regards to a tent to be able to house the equipment so we can get moving forward on the fire hall. So those would be my suggestions, but I'll open up for council. Councillor Trowbridge? Well, we haven't even moved anything really yet. My suggestion was, but if you have something you want to move, go ahead. Sure. Yeah.
So, two quick questions. The site kind of goes down and it gets higher down where the building's going to go, which is where most of the fill is, I would gather. Did anybody check the soil up the top? Can you like move the trailers out and put this building up at the top and then have better soil?
It's underlain with it all the same. They did do holes everywhere, and it was the same condition across.
Lovely. And then I notice you have ladder truck number 7 behind engine number 1, and you still got the capote of the trailer and all this other stuff in. I'm using this picture.
Yeah.
Do they all have to be in there, or can you put ladder truck beside engine 1 and the other guys sit outside for a while until the new fire hall's built, and then they can go inside and have a great life?
I can go back to the team and ask that question.
We could follow up with that at the fire trustee meeting.
Okay, because like it doesn't save much. It only saves like $260K, but when you're $1.5 million over budget, like every little bit helps.
Okay. Councillor Trowbridge.
Yeah, it's a lot more money than we contemplated originally, but we have some grant money to go towards this, right? Remind me, it's like $1 million, $1.3 million?
Yeah, we have roughly the chief financial officer's there, and she'll clear me if I'm wrong, I'm sure.
I should be looking at just over $1 million. Could you, is it okay if you tell me how we would fund this? Do you have
I
that?
don't have the financial impact yet. We just have the cost estimates, so we'll meet after this to discuss.
So I've done a little bit of investigation of the different pots of money here. So there's different components that would need to be upgraded. So one is the water system. That could be actually completed under a DCC project, as it's part of the increase in services to the village. That's one area we could draft money from, but that would just be for water infrastructure on that one. There's also the brine funding that was put together, and I think that was approximately $300,000 because it included a bit of a structure and the facilities to go along with that. So that's where the 1.5 was kind of generated. It was adding some of these other pots of money together. I would say currently within the funding side of things, we're without looking at other areas, we're probably around $1.2 million short currently from readily available kind of pots.
From including, sorry to interrupt.
So I would say we're probably looking at different pots which could become available for this project. We're probably at overall budget of $2 million, which would say we're about $1.3 million short of that, $3.3 million.
Now,
Karen just wants to add something. Karen.
Thank you. Also, through the chair, in addition to the funds that Mr. Boyd talked about, we do have that as part of the recommendation this evening to come back with refined cost estimates and funding strategy. So at that time, we would be able to let council know what other available funds we have, whether that be grant funding or CACs or other funds available. I will also note that coming back to council as part of that funding strategy, the $1 million that was allocated from the Growing Communities Fund, there will be a deadline on the spend of that, so we would come back to council with that as well, because if council chooses not to advance this project, we would ask for direction to reallocate that money so that we don't go past the funding, which would all be included in this report back to council should council wish to advance consideration.
Thank you. Yeah, I want to be clear. I'm a massive fan of redeveloping the works yard. The situation our guys and gals have had to deal with is nothing short of embarrassing and horrific for them for years and years. It's not a good environment, but we need to be able to pay for it. So that's hence my questions. But I want to ask a couple of things. So we're doing the IPD process, which for the crowd is integrated project delivery, which built this building. which typically keeps us on budget. And you've got a risk allowance. Is that a different word for the risk register? Is that the integrated?
Correct, yeah. That would be under a risk register.
Okay, so it's the proper risk register. So if any of the trades go over, they lose their opportunity to make their full
Yeah,
profit.
but however, from my perspective, from a staff perspective here, from the village side, I'd actually look to decrease that risk register now before it entered into an IPD contract, such as doing some more geotechnical work and contamination work, so I could take that out of the risk register because it's actually not a risk now, and they wouldn't be entitled to mitigate and get funds from that. If that
I
makes sense.
follow that logic, actually.
It doesn't slow anything down.
No.
We need it anyway, yeah.
Yeah, no, that's fair. This is going to have offices up and then a big space. The offices will be conditioned space, obviously.
Correct.
Is the warehouse portion, for want of a better word, is that contemplated to be a conditioned space as well for the equipment?
Yes, but for like equipment conditioning in terms of it isn't going to be air conditioned. It's not going to be 20. It's like it would have
construction term. Just
yes.
means, is it going to be heated?
Yes, it would be heated to the point so actually all the equipment stays dry, and if it's freezing out, it stays above 0 degrees, and it's comfortable inside of there, not conditioned to office space.
Okay. Well, as I say, I'm very much in favor of getting this done, but we need to know how to pay for it. And
So the motion was?
Yep, let me read the motion.
To receive the report dated from March 31st, 20, titled Operations Center Upgrades Feasibility Report for information, and that staff report back to council with refined cost estimates and funding strategy, and continue the analysis of the site, I guess,
yep.
or if that's fine. So if I get someone to second that. Let's just get it moved and seconded. Comments?
in terms of is it FLA or LFA? What's our low interest financing?
MFA.
MFA. Okay, I'll go with that. It's a couple $250,000 to accommodate the fire part of it. It would be pretty difficult to try and include that in the fire funding or any more than that amount, wouldn't it? Like, you know what I'm saying, Karen? We had thought about how we could manage that because it was going to temporarily house our fire department. But if there's a fixed number that's saying it needs to be expanded by $250,000 to accommodate that, how do you look for more? I'm not saying you're looking for more, but Mayor McEwen brought it up that it comes back to the trustees and we talk about that.
Yeah, we'd have to come back with a report on that, Councillor Trowbridge. However, I think the way the report would be structured would be in order to house a temporary facility, it would cost X amount for us to build a temporary structure. I'm just going to pick numbers. It's $1 million. And I don't know if you would then want to go to MFA and say, hey, we're looking to acquire $1 million, but we're going to put into this structure because ultimately we're going to take it over. I don't know how MFA would look upon that, but I think it would be something that staff would have to probably talk with MFA and talk with the authorities.
That's fair, but I think as much guidance as we can have and as much of as much information as you can give us when we end up in the trustee meeting, we'll be better prepared.
I think it's going to be very indicative because Belcarra's, I don't believe they have any reserves to do anything. So we're going to be quickly seeing what they're going to be needing in that. And again, because we split it 50-50, it won't be a big issue to be drawing this similar amount. We were hoping we weren't going to have to, but let's cross that bridge when we get to the trustee meeting and also talk to the fire chief as to what equipment needs to be stored and how secure and heated and all those sort of parameters. What's the bare minimum we need? So, yeah. So with that, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. Okay, we'll now move on to unfinished business. Mayor's report, quickly, it's been a long night. Easter, great turnout, between probably 200 to 300 people. Just want a big thank you to the Garden Club for making the grounds around the hub look so amazing for the long weekend and for Easter. Big thank you as well to Anmore Youth, the Scouts, Sabina and the staff who were here. It was amazing. Weather was spectacular. That's all I have. Council reports, anybody? Councillor Richardson?
Yeah, I echo Mayor McEwen's. I thought the Easter thing was really fun, and I thank all the volunteers that came out because they really make it happen. And I'm still on the search for a pogo stick that's able to do, 200-pound-ish mail. So if anybody has one, let me know.
Good. Councillor Cryer.
Thank you, Mayor McEwen. I want to report that our first Brain Health Awareness Recognition Day, I'm not sure what we called it, was a massive success. We had a great crowd. I believe I have an email in my inbox, and she would like to do it again with no charge to us, which was lovely. But I came in and had a good visit. Lots of people would like to see it monthly, weekly, daily, but they really enjoyed it. It was really nice. Sabina did a great job getting it all set up, so thank you.
Yeah, I stopped by. It was really well attended in that. Chief Administrative Officer's report.
Thank you. Just a couple mail outs for folks. Utility bills were mailed out and they are due May 1st. Anmore Advisor should have been delivered by now in your mail slots. We have till April 10th, the Community Spirit Awards open for nominations, so please send those along through the village.hall@anmore.com email box. And bingo on Friday night, this Friday night at 6 p.m. with the Anmore Youth Group. Thanks.
Good. We've got a couple information items. Tri-Cities Healthier Community Partnership meeting minutes, Metro Vancouver Board and Brief, open up for public question period. Public is permitted to ask questions of council. I guess it should be questions and comments of council and any pertaining to village business. 2-minute time applies to speakers.
Sorry.
Essen, is it now comments as well? Yeah.
Yes, I thought.
Yeah.
Correct. Actually, the Anmore Advisor has not yet shown up in the Strong Road Superbox, so I'm not sure if it's shown up in other places, but I thought people should be aware. Actually, what I wanted to, so sorry, Nancy Maloney, I know it's late, I know everyone's tired, but I did want to mention something else, which is in recent minutes there was mention of Anmore considering possibly future participation in Bear Smart. So it seems like our village is not aware that Bear Smart is not accepting any new applications. No new applications for Bear Smart due to a lack of staffing. Funding has been suspended. There is no more provincial funding at this moment in time for Bear Smart, so no applications at the moment. But as an alternative, there's a website called thefurbearers.com, and hopefully you can hear fairbearers.com. It provides useful wildlife attractive bylaw. So there's a template for a bylaw, which we could use. It's a toolkit for designing a municipal bylaw for protecting bears. So furbearers.com. And it's designed, this is a registered charity, and they would also provide to us free door hangers, free handbooks, and many more materials for us to initiate our own Bear Smart, which is not possible to do through the province anymore. Okay.
Just wondering, yeah, you could, maybe that would be an avenue would be through the Environment Committee to bring some of that stuff.
But Paul, would you like me to send you an email about this?
Yep.
Yeah, sure. And maybe, the next Environment Committee you'd like to attend and maybe present some of this stuff and help us out with it.
Yeah,
We'd love to have you there.
Yes, please. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
I'll try to put a package together.
Okay, good.
Okay, thank you.
Nancy, I just want to check, was that called fairbear.com?
It's, I think it's thefurbearers.com.
Okay.
So the, T-H-E, furbearers, FURBEARERS.com.
Thank you.
That's, I'm on their mailing list, thefurbearers.com.
Good. Thanks.
Okay, so I know it's late and we've just been through all this, but can someone explain to me the CDC breakdown for what we were just talking about tonight with Pinnacle?
The pardon?
The CDC breakdown.
CDC?
The development contribution breakdown.
It's CAC.
CAC, okay, CAC.
I've got it here. It's in the staff report, yeah.
Was it 2 point some million?
2.04 million.
2.04. So, and how do you break that down as far as like, is that divided by per unit to get your, or is it by lot or like?
It's in it's in the staff report on that page. There's 2 pages on how it's comprised.
Is that right?
Yeah.
So
and it also gives a breakdown of the open space as well.
Can you kind of tell me what that would be then? Is it?
It's page 22 on if you look at what you received in the agenda, or
right.
107 in the whole deck, and it's all there.
Okay. So when I calculated, it was like $6,500 per unit. When I calculated, it was $6,500 per unit. Did I get that right, or am I wrong?
No, it has nothing to do with units. It's a land lift.
Okay.
So which is an Anmore bylaw, has been for a long time. So it's based on land, not units.
Okay. So how do we come up with is it 150,000 when if someone takes an acre and they're allowed to subdivide it under infill?
It's not prescribed by us. You can't mandate a CAC. Okay. It's a voluntary CAC everywhere.
Okay. Well, I'll digest that. Thank you.
Ken Uvick, 120 Lansing Crescent. Through the chair, my question is to Councillor Cryer. Given the complexities of all the septic failures on the relatively flat ground in Anmore, and the comments that Mayor McEwen has made tonight, and the examples that I cited, in your mind, is there a number of failures or problems that have happened or existing now? What number would cause you to pause your support that you put forward tonight for the third reading?
There's not a number.
Not a number?
No.
Are you concerned about the existing?
Yes, I am concerned.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks for asking.
Ramey Capel, 1017 Ravenswood. There was a comment about the bonding. I believe the bonding goes on each phase and it's registered against the property. It's sort of like a guarantee should something happen. I believe that's how it's done. And as I gather, the bonding is removed after that phase is completed. So then at that point, we become very vulnerable as a community. Another comment I want to make is a lot of emphasis was placed on the remaining forests that'll be left up there, which the community, or the Pinnacle Ridge community, is built around that forest, which will become a liability. When you clear cut above the remaining green belt, I can only imagine what's going to happen, and it disturbs me as a member of the community that we are going to be liable should that green belt fail. Anybody can comment about the bonding? And the last question regarding the bonding, if it's registered against the property at land registry, does it go at the bottom of the mortgages or does it go in front? Because if it goes in front, it has to be approved by the lenders. My point being is if the debt is greater than the damage done, and our bonding is like third or fourth in line, there's no assurance that we're going to be compensated if we have a serious slide up there.
Yeah, I'm not sure how the bonding...
I believe it's worth looking into. It's a little late now, it doesn't really matter, but I just want the community to know that we're in a very vulnerable position going forward with liability.
Can I comment? Just, Remy, when I did my subdivision and they required a bond, I don't know if it's the same in this, I had to deposit a check with the village. I brought a cashier's check for the full amount of the bond.
Well, as I understand, it's just something registered against the property. That's how I read it.
Well, I'm telling you, I showed up with a check, and it kind of...
I'm waiting for a response. Is that what's going to be applied to this development? Silence. That's not a good indication.
I'll answer, but this is for council, not for staff to answer, but I'll answer directly to you. And the answer is that I'm not too sure what you're talking about in terms of, if you're talking about the servicing bond, because I'm not really understanding what you mean by a bond.
When I read the agenda for this evening, I was led to believe, my interpretation was that's registered against the property, that if there is a major failure in some way, we had some recourse because we had something registered against the property, much like a mortgage.
Yeah, okay, so I think you might be confusing a few things. I think what you might be referring to is a servicing agreement, that's in relation to building infrastructure.
So it has nothing to do with liability.
Well, the liability is covered by the contract and stuff. They have to have liability insurance.
Well, I'll reiterate, I can only hope that we have some independent reports going forward, because that chunk of forest left there with development above it, clear cut above it, let's hope that we have the best experts reviewing, like independent experts, even from a liability perspective, to allow a couple people with, to review, no disrespect, but we need, for liability reasons, we need independent reports.
Thank you. Thanks, Mr. Cook. Okay. We'll just do one more, and then it's been a long night.
Ben Lowen, 1722 East Road. A couple questions. Did you guys all get a chance to review the full report in the last 4 days over Easter weekend? Interested to know how long you guys had, and if you felt that was enough time for residents to review a 600-page document. Are you surprised that many of us were against this, and there was not one vote that this was a positive thing from any resident in here? There was 3 votes, not even changing of the densities, which was, I think, a great suggestion to reduce the impact. The only 3 votes for this in this room were 3 of the councillors who voted yes. So are you surprised that is, and maybe reasons why you weren't listening to the public there? On the transportation side, have you maybe driven down that path where you think after this development we will only have a 4 or 5 car length buildup? Interested to know if you've experienced that already, and if not, just wondering where you're driving. Looking at a few last questions here with the time we've got. Can you say, is there a case study that you're using as an example or as a precedent where you are allowing 300 homes to be built on communal septic in the province as an example or a precedent, not just using detailed analysis, but as a precedent to show that, yeah, this is a good, viable solution for us as a village. Instead of doing addendums or these, why don't we wait till the OCP be fully approved instead of draft? Can you confirm why maybe you haven't wanted to go that route? Liability-wise, when and if this slope falls down, my property directly below, I've got 2 young kids. If something were to happen to that, who, again, is liable? Part of the question here. Who do we recoup that financial impact from? Comments on that? Looking forward to hear your answers. Just a few of them. I'll email all of them, but I know it's been late, but I think these are worth hearing answers from councillors. So, any comments on the first one? Did you guys have enough time over the Easter long weekend?
I'll just answer one. There are not 300 homes on a communal septic.
Did you feel like you had enough time over the Easter long weekend to review this report? And did you think that it was fair for residents to also spend their long weekends reviewing this report?
I spent my weekend reading this as it's my job. I don't expect any resident to read this entire agenda because it's not their job to do that. And as a professional engineer, I understand you're a professional engineer. It's my process to look at the professional engineering reports. There is a process in place. It's followed everywhere in the Lower Mainland. And we have ISL Engineering as our independent engineer that reviews everything. Chris is also a professional engineer. They employ professional engineers. We are not professional engineers. We're counselors.
Right.
So we trust that when they say that this is viable, that the septics are viable, and somebody's going to stamp it and sign it off, we have to trust that. It's not appropriate for us to say, I think this whole hill's going to slide down, just because I think that. Are you saying that as a professional engineer that that's going to happen?
So are you're saying that you reviewed fully the full report over the weekend? That's what you're,
I
that's what you're
read
saying,
the
and each of the councillors did so?
I'm satisfied that the due diligence has been done at this point for third reading, that this is a viable development, and I'm satisfied that moving forward, that the further assessments are going to be done to make sure that it is going to be as safe as it possibly can be. People keep talking about Pinnacle Ridge before there was not the checks and balances in place that we have today.
So
there was no
when you did the
riparian
Anmore
area.
South, there was these detailed analysis done before third reading.
Anyway,
but it's
I've
not.
said what I have to say.
I think
There's other questions you can answer as well.
I'm just going to say it's not a back and forth. It's present your questions. I would appreciate if you could email all of us. I respond and I will, and hopefully everybody else does the same. So
Can I answer one question you asked?
Sure, yeah.
You asked if we had time.
Yeah.
Most of the contents of this have been out on the website for a month. Most of the documentation in here is reports and documents from previous council meetings. So the amount of new material in here is not large. So yes, you can read it in a 4-day thing.
Great. Yeah. Did everyone else have a chance to review it over the Easter long weekend? You didn't? Okay.
Of course we did. It's our job.
Right.
I'm questioning, though, why you continue to ask the same questions, expecting different answers.
I'm just going to say point of order. Thank you very much. If you could send our questions out, that would be great. Thank you.
Email them again.
Okay, thank you. Motion to adjourn. Moved. Second. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you, everyone, for coming out.